please join us in the flag salute. Choir, would you like to start us in the flag salute, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we will start with some student recognition this evening. Mr. Rectory, please.
We're recognizing Century's swim team tonight, both girls and boys. Let me just read off some accomplishments for the swim team, then we'll get them up here. The Century High School swim team, led by Coach Sarah Holman, has earned many honors during the 2013-14 season. During the Pacific Conference Championships, both boys and girls teams placed third, winning 11 of 22 events and breaking many district records, including the girls' 200 free relay, the girls' 100 back, and the girls' 400 free relay. 5 girls and 4 boys on Century High School swim team qualified for state competition, more individuals than ever before in the team's history. All of these swimmers qualified for finals, with state titles going to Ellie Thornbrew, is that correct? Come on up. 200 free and 500 free. Sarah Mesh. 100 fly, 100 back. Sarah tied the OSAA record for that. And then, I'm going to butcher this name too. Liam. Metz.
Brother and sister.
Oh, okay. And so he's a guy?
He is.
He's not here? He's not here, okay. I'm looking for, we're not back there, it looks like a swimmer. And he won the 50 free. Both the girls' 200 free and 400 free relays also won, and they set the state record in the 400 free. Congratulations to Century High School's girls, state team champions, and boys placing 7th in state. And I did a little research. Yeah, come on up.
We have another brother-sister team here.
And as I understand it, this is Century's first state championship team, correct?
Girls softball won 2 years ago. This is the second ever.
Okay. But I did a little research, and since 1948, when they started swimming state championships, this is the first one for our district. And for the people here that aren't swimmers like you and I, can you give them a basic practice schedule that you guys go through, just to give them an idea?
Well, these kids that make it to state, they train year-round. Our high school season goes from November through middle of February, but these guys swim 12 months a year. They swim 6 days a week usually. They'll go 12 to 14 days in a row if they have a meet all weekend long. And they train 2 times a day, usually 2 to 3 times a week. And so usually averaging about 20 to 25 hours a week of training.
Wow. But how many laps do
let's see. Over winter break, they actually add up their mileage and how much did you guys do over the 2 weeks of winter break this year? 96 miles.
Wow.
That's quite an accomplishment. So in a one practice, they might be swimming a mile or 2, right?
No. They can do up to 10,000 yards in a practice, and a mile is 1,650 yards. So you're looking about 8 miles of practice.
8 miles in one practice. Wow. With chlorine in their eyes and ears. Well, we really appreciate it. We really understand the dedication and hard work you guys put in.
And they swim outside.
Yeah.
So I think we are the only district in Hillsboro where our kids swim outside in the winter. So in the winter time in the morning when it was 19 degrees, we were outside swimming.
Wow.
Sounds really early in the morning.
We're there to go to the opens.
Well, thank you very much, and we sure appreciate it.
Stand here in the center.
All the swimmers together?
All the swimmers together. Monty, what was your stroke?
I was so bad that I didn't really.
No, you didn't.
They just kind of threw me in whenever.
One, two, three. And one more, just in case. One, two, three. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We also have the pleasure tonight to introduce the Jackson Elementary 5th and 6th grade choir, taught by Marcia Kelly. The Jackson Choir will be performing 2 songs tonight. I Will Sing My Song and Pizza. Please welcome the Jackson Elementary 5th and 6th grade choir.
This is actually a small membership of our choir. We have more than this. We have a big district band festival tonight, and we have about 7 or 8 kids in that. And we have kids going out of town, we have kids at basketball games, and so this is my solid team who came, right? So I think we deserve a choir. And because I'm so tall and I block most of them while they sing, they asked me if I would sit in a chair. I've never, ever done that before. But, you know,
They're small but mighty.
it's for the kids. Yeah. So this is I Will Sing My Song. Okay.
I will sing my song. I will make my own music. I will fill the
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, I think I say it every month, that's always the best part of the show. Watching kids achieve and have amazing success in the conference. Moving right along, I'm looking for approval of agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
I second. Moved by Janine, seconded by Adriana. Any questions or comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And I don't believe we have any audience time comment forms. Double checking if anyone in the audience wants to speak this evening. Okay, seeing none, we'll move along. Next, I would need a motion to approve the consent agenda, please.
I'll move to the consent agenda.
Thank you. I'll second. Moved by Glenn, seconded by Janine to approve the consent agenda as printed. Any comments or questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And now we're going to move into action items. And as I mentioned earlier this evening, we have a long list of them. The first one is to approve the boundary adjustment changes, and I'll take them off to Adam, please.
Okay, we are going to get a PowerPoint up, but in the meantime, I wanted to talk a little bit about the process that we used and what we've done over the past several weeks. As you recall, back in, I think it was November or December, we came to the board with the recommendation that we needed to look at adjusting our school boundaries in some selected areas due to increased development that was happening in different parts of our school district. There it is right there. So, beginning on January 15th, we formed a boundary adjustment committee that looked at all of the development that was happening, looked at all of our current attendance boundaries, specifically for elementary schools, and went to work with the guiding principles that the school board had presented us as we went through this, as we started into this process. And just as a reminder of what those guiding principles are, the first primary goal of this process was to maintain our existing feeder patterns. We wanted to make sure that students who are in the Liberty feeder group were able to stay in that feeder group from kindergarten through graduation. If you're in Century, same thing. So that was our primary goal. Secondary, we were trying to minimize the numbers of schools and students who were impacted by the boundary adjustments. We were also trying to minimize the changes to those families who we knew had already been through this boundary adjustment process. We've got pockets of our community because of the fact that we've built schools over the last several years and we've seen a lot of development in some of those areas. We've redrawn the boundaries several times, and we've had families who have been impacted more than once by that process. We wanted to keep that in mind as we started through this process. We wanted to make the adjustments for the long term. Now that's relative. We know that we did this 5-6 years ago. We'll probably have to do this in another 5 or 6 years when we have to build new schools. The goal is to get us from today through that process. We wanted to consider transportation and other costs in making this decision. We wanted to maintain existing neighborhoods. If you were involved in any of our community meetings, you'll know that we weren't successful in this one in particular in one occasion, and it caused us to go back and start over again. We wanted to create an appeal process for those families who were impacted by the boundary adjustment. If you were going to have to move from your school to a new school, we wanted you to have the opportunity to apply for a transfer back to your old school. We recognize we can't do that for every student, but we wanted to have a process in place. We wanted to make sure that people who were impacted and people who weren't impacted were aware that we have other schools in our district that may offer some of those programs that families are looking for. We have dual language programs in several of our schools throughout the district. We have STEAM and STEM opportunities in other schools. We want to make sure folks were aware of those. and we tried to consider equity in the boundary adjustment process. So, what did we do? We met initially as a committee on January 15th, which was a Wednesday. We started at the January 22nd meeting with what we called our zero proposal. That was a proposal that we dreamt up in my office one day, trying to address as many of those guiding principles as we could, knowing that it wasn't going to be the solution, but we wanted a place to start. We presented that to the committee. We had lots of conversation. We then met as a small group, came up with a second recommendation at the 29th meeting. Anyway, we met 5 different times as a committee, each time going through that same process. We would start with a proposal, we take input on that, go reconvene our small group, change the proposal, come back. What we ended up with on the 12th of February was proposal number 4 that we felt was ready to take out to the community. And we did that at community meetings at Tobias Elementary, Witch Hazel Elementary, Orenco Elementary, and Quatama Elementary, 4 different meetings. In each of the feeder groups that were impacted, 2 in the Liberty feeder group. Following that meeting, the committee gathered all of the input we received at the committee meetings, on the 3x5 cards that we handed out at the committee meetings, through our website, through emails, reconvened our committee, came up with a 5th recommendation that we presented on May 6th. That was meant to be the final meeting. However, because it was significantly different than the proposal we had made with our 4th effort, we were receiving feedback from West Union in particular that they would like to talk to us. So we went out and met with them on, what's the date of that?
It was last Thursday.
Last Thursday, whatever date that was. So we've had a total of 5 community meetings and 6th meeting with just the West Union community. And what you will see here is what we're calling our proposal number 5, plan number 5, and I will walk you through that now. Included in this packet are lots of information as to how we came up with the estimates we came up with, what the enrollment is currently at each of these, and what we assume it will be with all of the development that we're anticipating. There's a proposal summary included in there that kind of breaks down for each school the numbers of students who are going to be moved as a result of the boundary adjustment, and how many new students we're anticipating due to new developments. We also have a Q&A that we developed. These are actually questions that came to us from our friends at the Oregonian that we decided were such good questions that we put them in the form of a Q&A to share with the community. And finally, we have a yellow sheet there that includes what we anticipate the enrollment will be after the boundary adjustment. And I guess by way of highlighting the right-hand column there, there's no longer any negatives. We're no longer over capacity at any of our buildings with this proposal. So, what does proposal number 5 look like? What you have here is a map of the current Tobias and Indian Hills boundary. What we're proposing is that area. I'm going to get up. What we're proposing is, yes, that area will right up here, which will move from the Tobias attendance area to the Indian Hills attendance area. We heard some concerns from the Indian Hills community because all these students are walkers. They're currently walkers at Tobias. They'll be walkers to Indian Hills. We have some concerns about some of the streets and paths in there. So we're having our Safe Walk to Schools committee will be working in that area. But that is the recommendation of this area with move to the Indian Hills attendance area. Okay. That's just a description of that change. Okay, this is the current Rosedale attendance area. This is Brookwood. This is, yeah. I'm sorry, there's right there. Okay, so let's look at the new Rosedale. This area right here, which is currently in the Witch Hazel attendance area, is scheduled to move into the Rosedale attendance area. Basically everything east of Brookwood will now become part of the Rosedale attendance area.
Can we give you questions as you do each map if
Yeah.
someone has a clarifying question? All right. Wayne, did you have?
Yeah, on the move to Indian Hills, was that the only concern, was the walking path that you heard?
Yeah, I mean,
This one had hit my radar, and then I was out at the parade on Saturday, and
we heard
it wasn't the West Union that came up, it was this one, and I was surprised.
the Tobias Indian Hills one. We heard from lots of parents at each of our community meetings, just, we don't want to go, which, you know, I get. But in terms of actual concerns about the proposal itself, that was the concern we heard with the Tobias Indian Hills.
Was the transportation about walking and safety?
Yeah.
I was kind of wondering because along Tobias and Indian Hills and Potama, the West Union, the STEAM conversation and STEM STEAM conversation, was there a big concern where people were saying, wait a minute, I'm at it?
Yeah, we heard it in a couple of different ways. One was we've got students who are currently in a STEAM school who are going to have to move. We also heard from the principals who are saying, if my enrollment drops, I'm going to lose staff. And those staff members have been trained to be STEAM or STEM instructors. So yes, we did hear that. What we're trying to do to address that is work with our transfer process. We're going to try, especially in the Tobias Indian Hills area where all those students are currently walkers. And we think we don't anticipate all of the new students showing up the first day of September next year. We're going to be able to have some transfer opportunities for students. Not every student's going to be able to transfer back to Tobias, but we will have some opportunities. Okay. Okay, so Rosedale, and again, Rosedale. This was actually our quietest community meeting. We had very few folks attend this meeting, partly because, go back for a second, the majority of the students that are going to impact Rosedale aren't there yet. They're a result of all red are the new developments. The majority of the students that are going to be moved from Witch Hazel, to Rosedale aren't there yet. I think there was 20 or 25 kids, something like that, that are actually being moved. Okay, so this is Witch Hazel. Obviously, this is the other half of that equation. So it's this area right here that will be moving from Witch Hazel to Rosedale. And it will look like that. So now we get into the Liberty feeder group, which was the most challenging of all. And when we get to the Orenco area in particular, you'll understand why. This is what Orenco, or this is what Katama currently looks like. It kind of wraps around Orenco currently. And what we're proposing is that this area, which was currently in the Orenco area, would move out of Orenco and into Katama, and an area over here would move out of Katama into West Union. So we've got an area just north of the Katama crossing, the area that will move to Lenox. And we've got the Katama crossing area that will move to West Union. So Orenco was the real challenge. Remember, one of our primary missions here was to try to maintain feeder patterns. Orenco is here. Katama wraps completely around. It has its own capacity issues. Everything east of Orenco is in the Beaverton School District. Everything south is in the Century attendance area. So it posed a real challenge for us. So what you're going to see is that this area over here,
Sorry, we're having conflicting technology
No.
issues.
so this area over here will be moving to Quitama. This area right here, which is an over 55 modular home park, which currently has one student living in it, and that student is on a transfer to Tobias. So we're proposing to move this area to Tobias. So this is what the new Orenco will look like. The other piece that we did is this right now is undeveloped. This will be the Walmart property.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Say it.
If it becomes the Walmart property and all of the development that's scheduled to happen there, it's 242 housing units, so it's a big chunk. We're proposing that this area move to the inlay attendance area, which is in a different feeder group, but there's nobody there at this time. So this seems like the opportunity to move it into the inlay attendance area, which does have the capacity, and that's what we're proposing. So, again, yeah.
Questions, can we get questions now?
Yeah.
A couple questions on that. So when you talked about, I like that proposal of that area because no one is there yet, hopefully might not be, that they go to a different, school. Is Imlay because there's more growth opportunity there? Because it seems like Lad Acres is straight down Cornelius Pass.
It's actually, we'll see on the map, this is an Imlay right here. So that's why we
Okay.
look at it.
I had, and I appreciated when you were looking at, Quitama and Orenco have really worked through have really had to deal with a lot of moving and transferring because of the growth that's happening in that area, and the focus on building around light rail. So that area is being built up. So I really appreciate all the consideration and really the extra time. And when you looked at the emails that came that really talked about their concerns, people really genuinely felt like they were heard because they had personal responses from either one of you. And I think that it's a particularly tough, sensitive area because of the changes that have taken place there. And I also really appreciate the change in looking at mobility rates. So when you talk about Quitama, and at one point there was a heavy apartment complex for Quitama, and that was really looked at and said, we need to make sure. I we heard from the principal, and we heard from parents and staff members that had concern, not because of a level of, but because of when your mobility is that students are not getting situated with a school routine and their instruction, and so that can affect different levels of their education. And so I just really appreciate that you guys really sat down, and the committee and everything just worked really hard to resolve that.
We did.
I'll say that.
We said going into this process that this is not a process that's going to make people happy. Most people won't care because it doesn't impact them. And the people who do care are the ones who are going to be impacted. And I mean, the nature of this process is somebody's got to move in order to make way for this new development. So we tried to be as thoughtful as we could, but we're not making everybody happy. We knew that.
But I think a lot of people acknowledged the work, and they acknowledged that this was a very difficult process, but they acknowledged the fact, at least the letters that we received and website feedback, that there was a lot of thought process and there was good conversation that was happening, and there was a general appreciation.
So that was Orenco. This is the move area map. Now, if Brian was here, he would tell you that he loves this because he's added to his kingdom a little bit. It's this area right here. Move area has doubled in size. There's no students. This is all airport. So he's pretty happy. He added a train and an airport to his. The reason it looks like this, and the reason we did this, is in one of our earlier proposals, we had some area moving to Newberry, and this was going to tie all of Newberry together. We didn't end up going with that proposal, but this.
Was it important to designate non-residential areas?
Is it important? No.
But as long as they were colored in a map.
We just didn't undo it after we did it. Okay, so let's talk about West Union. This is the southern portion of the West Union boundary. West Union goes to the north, on and on. This currently looks like, and this is the new proposal. So this portion hasn't changed much. What you're seeing is this area, which has 135 students, which is proposed to move to the West Union attendance area. So let's go to the page that describes the changes.
And Adam, could you describe why it's West Union and not Lenox?
Yes, Lenox does not have capacity for 135 students. West Union does. West Union was always going to be part of the solution because of all the growth that's happening in the Liberty attendance area and where it's happening. Our alternative in some of our earlier proposals, we looked at moving kids from Quotama to Eastwood to Newberry, or and kind of shuffling kids across boundaries. And it was impacting so many kids, so many families that we decided that wasn't a viable option. So we knew that West Union had the capacity, and that's where we ended up.
Can I ask a question, and Kim might be able to answer this, is when you, I know that Quotama is a white, red, green school, and you have those kids that are working really heavily with STEAM in Quotama, and the majority of them are going to be transferred to a good portion to West Union. Is West Union red, green?
It's not a right brain yet. I will say their principal's a right brain trained instructor. He's had a professional development of right brain.
So is there a way to
ask
them and ask them if they could
it's not as easy as schmoozing, but I think they're always, I mean, the ultimate goal of Right Brain Initiative and the districts that are participating in it is to encompass every student K-8. Okay. So would you want to add West Union to higher on the priority list? Potentially. I do think, I mean, West Union has some arts programming that's unique to West Union, and there's art access that's different than Quotama even, and other schools that do like art literacy. So I don't think it's a complete disconnect. Not as many teachers have been trained in that integration, but.
In the Right Brain Initiative, the organization themselves have to have capacity to take on additional schools. So that's part of the conversation.
Okay.
I guess the shuffling discussion you're talking about was an alternative would be to just extend the pink down and absorb that into a more contiguous kind of a...
Yeah, we actually had West Union coming down over in this area. In fact, part of...
Do you want to see plan 4 or no?
Let me see if I can talk to it. West Union was coming all the way down to baseline, and we actually pulled in a neighborhood here. What's the name of that?
Wrinkle Gardens.
Thank you, Wrinkle Gardens. That we pulled in thinking it was a separate neighborhood. We heard very clearly that it was not, and we actually drove it, and it's not. It's all a single neighborhood. So, but yes, at one point West Union did come all the way down to baseline.
And is that also area that where families who've been impacted previously as well?
Yes.
You know, I also just want to point out too that we did some testing as far as like buses for this Quotama crossing, and it's 2 buses in centralized locations. They're express to and from West Union, so it's a 20-minute bus ride. So it actually works out pretty well to get those kids there, and they're also familiar with John the principal because he was at the previous school. So it makes sense on a lot of levels to do it.
Thank you. Okay, so this is the inlay. This is the current inlay. And this is the area that we're proposing. This is the Walmart property, and that's why it looks like that. You're right, it's directly below this. Okay, so this is the current Lennox. This is the area that we're moving to, from Potomac to Lennox. Again, it makes perfect sense on the map that the Potomac Crossing property would go to Lennox. If you could scroll down a little bit. Okay, so we looked at the idea of moving some of these kids to West Union and incorporating the Potomac Crossing kids into Lennox. The problem is, that's Lennox Elementary School right there. So the idea of moving these kids didn't display. So I think that's all of our maps, is that right? Okay. So I'll answer all the questions you want. I do want to thank all of the members of this committee. It was a huge commitment. In particular, Todd and Eloise from Transportation, who ran all our maps, participated in every meeting, every community meeting. Diane from the business office, who took all our minutes and everything. Everything you see posted online was generated by these guys. So thank you guys.
Discussion and more Q&A on this. If I could get a motion on the table for the boundary change, please.
I would make a motion that we accept the boundary change proposal as presented by Adam.
I second.
All right, and then we can move into discussion. I'm going towards Glenn first, since you served on this committee. If you have anything else you wanted to add.
Well, I said it in our work session, so I just want to reiterate again the fabulous leadership that I saw through this process with Adam and Beth. In this process, it was very difficult. There was a lot of pressures on a lot of sides. But they went in with a good attitude and took a lot of feedback and just put tons and tons of work into what came out of this process. You guys stuck to the principles that the long-range planning committee and the board had put together as far as like openness and our guiding principles. So I was just very pleased as I could be with the outcome. Obviously, no proposal is perfect, but I thought that the process was about as open, honest, and fair as we could possibly make it. We were human. Maybe everything didn't quite go right, some of the communication glitches, but we did our best, and I just appreciate, what went on there.
Thank you.
Can you just summarize, and I don't want to get into the weeds, just the transfer process, that if I'm a parent in an affected area and I'm being moved, what are my options?
Sure, I'll take a shot. Beth is actually the transfer person, so she'll correct me. The transfer, right now, over the last several years, we've done what we call the level transfer, meaning that when folks apply for a transfer, we've said, yes, you can stay at this school from kindergarten through 6th grade or 7th and 8th grade or for a level. What we're proposing is that and it's on the board there, for the students in the, basically for all students, we are going to be sending out letters saying that you are approved, with one exception, for the 2014-15 school year to stay at the school that you're transferred to. However, it's no longer considered a level transfer. You will need to reapply each year to make sure that we have capacity in that building. The exception is at the Orenco Elementary School. All of the families that are currently there on transfers will be getting a letter saying you will be going back to your home school. We do anticipate having some transfer vacancies available for next year, but we can't allow everybody to stay at Orenco and have the capacity we need.
Now, is that a first come, first served transfer process, or?
Go ahead.
I mean, if I've got a kid that is being affected, how would I go through that?
Well, and just to give a little further nuance, and knowing that there are so many different individual situations, we've actually prepared, there's 8 different versions right now of letters to specifically kind of fit into the scenario that different families are experiencing. And that's everything from the difference between kids at the other affected schools versus Orenco, whether students have indicated that the reason they might be at a school is because they want to opt out of dual language. They get slightly different verbiage in their letter. Perhaps you have a special needs student that's been placed for a specific reason. We've got letters that are specific to those situations. So we've tried to be really thoughtful about who gets what type of letter, and then providing some really easy directions down at the bottom of the letter for what they do next that indicate the options available to them. And then in terms of what we're going to be able to offer, we really just, if this plan is approved tonight, then we just need to work with the individual principals to identify how many slots we reasonably think we can open, and that's kind of taking a subset of the anticipated new students versus the remaining capacity, giving us an overall number, and then from there we really need to look at, okay, what are the capacities at the various grade levels that can be accommodated. So, you know, it's kind of a case-by-case situational basis, and we'll work to, you know, just maximize what we can do for families with each school.
I guess I would say as a general rule, our goal is to accommodate as many people as we possibly can, while being mindful that we've got students in the neighborhood that we've got to have space for. So, but the goal is to accommodate as many as we possibly can and not cause a transition where it's not necessary.
The other transfer piece is that any student who is currently at any of these buildings in a special program, so if your IEP says you need to be at Orenco, those students stay. They're not, they don't get sent home. So.
Okay, so Janine, and then I'm starting down to the right. You should come back.
I thought you had a question. No, good. Go on that.
Well, it's not necessarily the transfer so much as I just wanted to say, one thing I didn't mention was that we, as a committee, tried to be extremely thoughtful about every one of the proposal stuff that we put out. But particularly for this fifth proposal, I mean, we agonized over it. We looked at it every way conceivable, from every angle we could think of, doing the what-if scenarios. And in the end of the day, we as a committee voted unanimously to bring this to the board. So you should know that.
Thank you. Janine?
I wanted to say a couple of things. I attended every meeting except for two of them, and I just wanted to say that I was really impressed with not only, you know, just the engaged parents that were there and asking the questions, and, you know, having to show some raw emotion. This is an emotional thing for parents to be able, you know, and some people are comfortable sharing their emotion in public. And some people it's more difficult, but it is a process, and I think that this is so emotional that those that felt difficulty were able to do so, and I think there was consideration and kindness and compassion for those people, so I thank you. And I was really impressed, I'll say that two of them specifically that I went to, where I saw the principals that all came up to the front, and all the ones that were affected, and they were like, you know, this is what happens in our school, this is what our community of our school is like, and we welcome you. And we are all going to eventually go, you know, our goal is the feeder system is to keep it as clean as possible. So we're all Falcons, you know, we're all, and I really thought that was a really strong message, and I appreciated not only the principals, the staff members that I heard in the audience, teachers and everything that were sharing those same messages. So I wanted to share that, and to have Spanish translation at those meetings, to be able to make sure that all parents had the ability to be heard and be able to speak. And then the other thing was, you know, we see this change in the economy, so you're seeing a lot more growth and you're seeing a lot more change in the communities. And this process is a result of us having to react to the growth around us. And so we're absent at the table because we don't have to be invited. Nobody has to invite us. So I just want to say that at some point that I hope that our legislators get the message that schools are an essential service and should make that change to join police and fire and, yes, cemeteries at the table when looking at these developments and growth, because we're all then staff members are forced to be put into this situation, and I think that we should have that voice at the very beginning of the conversation.
A couple of thoughts. I had a lot of discussion at the end of the process about the concerned people with West Union coming up. And one really positive thing I wanted to bring out from that is I was very confident in being able to talk to them about, and I mentioned it earlier, that I can start from a position of, I know it's okay because I know that the people involved were thoughtful and professional and involved in making and taking into account all the right decisions. And I really appreciated the work that went in to give me the confidence to tell the community that, look, whatever the decision was, however it's coming out, I start from the position that it was well thought and that the concerns really were thought through and imagined in all the ways that you described. And I know that the West Union parents that were involved in the final meeting appreciated the discussion, particularly called out Glenn's interaction, and they appreciated your thoughtfulness in that. The only thing I wondered was that in reflection over the process, I think that the thing that they were annoyed most with was feeling like each of the prior big changes had discussion after before being called final. And a lot of that probably could have been diffused by some recognition that the next proposal also was a significant change and just phrased differently could have averted the stress that went through. I just wanted to mention that. I think everyone recognizes that in hindsight, but I appreciated all the work that went in, and I was glad that I could say with confidence that I knew that the people involved were all working for the best interests of all the kids for good reasons.
I think you guys pretty much summed it all up. I just want to emphasize, again, my appreciation, as everybody did. I don't really think our district, and I like to think of our district as a district that doesn't react but responds. And I really feel that this is a situation where we responded. You were very thoughtful, the guidelines were incredible, and I'm just going to share something because a very close friend lives in Katama and she's being moved. And her son is SPED on an IEP and in first grade, and his challenges with speech and language. So she kind of thought it was funny, but thought at the same time that she wanted to get her message, so she had him call me, and he refers to me as Dana. And he says, Dana, why do you change my school? I love my teacher. And I said to him, Sammy, we talked, and I said, this is a nice school. It's a school in the country because he's going to West Union. It's not in the city. And he was, and I talked to him on, and she understood. But the last thing I got was my son went to EI at West Union, early intervention, so he and my son are best friends. And I said, well, Ellie went to West Union. Oh, Ellie's school? Okay, cool. She called me the other day and she told me she took him for a drive by the school, and he was quite pleased, and the transfer, and asked her about the sentiment with the families in Katama. And she said for the most part, she felt that everyone was, understanding, and she really just feels, and she said, I just want to let you guys know that even how tough the decisions, because I know your decisions are difficult to make, and you have to make them, that we feel it here, that you guys have our interest, and change is hard. And she said it in Spanish, and I forget it sometimes, she said, no hay nada malo que no bueno sale, or something, if anyone remembers that, but basically, bad things don't come along where something positive always flourishes. So for me, there was a lot of hope in that, and there was a lot of positive in that. So I just wanted to share that, because you guys got all the good stuff.
Yeah. So again, I want to share everyone's appreciation for what you did, Adam. I think it's amazing that we're able to have this discussion, and there's not a mob with torches and pitchforks charging in to complain to us. So I think it's very good. You took a lot of people's concerns into account, and I think did the best job you could in these circumstances. But I think a lot of people are going to be affected, right? And it is going to be an unpleasant thing for those who are. So my question is, so have you thought about the future of this? So how long is it going to be till we next need a boundary adjustment? And I'm really thinking that we could be more proactive as a district here, right? If we provide incentives for people to voluntarily transfer out of, high population density areas, I think maybe we can head off having to affect as many people the next time this comes around, right? Maybe we should provide special transportation routes from, for example, the Orenco neighborhood to the Hillsboro Online Academy, or to, Farmington View, or to other underpopulated schools. And really try to make this a continuous process of balancing population out of our high population schools on a voluntary basis, so that we don't have to do what we did this year and tell a bunch of people that we're forcing them to go somewhere else.
So in terms of how long, I expect this to last. My hope is that it lasts until we start construction in the South Hillsboro area, at which time we're going to have to change boundaries, because we're going to have to move elementary schools from one attendance area to another. And hopefully that'll be after I retire. That's my goal. Frankly, we've been so deep in the weeds on this process, I haven't had a lot of time to think about what we can do to prepare and to try to alleviate this problem in the future. But I think we have talked with transportation quite a bit about the idea of trying to make our campuses more available. You guys took the step at the last board meeting in opening up spaces at some of our lower enrolled schools. So there's a cost to that, and I'm not sure what it would look like, but I think that's definitely something we need to consider. We have a lot of capacity district-wide. We just have pockets where we are really challenged.
Yeah, I really think we should be, working towards, doing that, so that, you say you're so deep in the weeds this year. What I want is, next time, not have as many weeds to be deep in. Right.
I'm all for that.
Yeah, I just wanted to share something on a thank you note to the board, and just in future as Hillsboro continues to grow. I've been living here for about 16 years now, and seen it just flourish, and I always preach this to many people. I say there's no other place in America like Hillsboro, where kids of migrant families go to school side by side with the children of CEOs. And I'm just very appreciative that this didn't turn into a situation that can possibly put communities against each other. And as we look at the future growth of Hillsboro and communities coming in of different socioeconomic levels, different colors, different backgrounds, we have a blessing and an opportunity for our children to grow in school. So I just wanted to say that as we end that and look into the future, that we cannot keep our eyes on that, because Hillsboro is growing, and you build it and they will come, because they're going to come.
And my comments have mostly been said this evening about the gratitude. I was especially appreciative of all of that we took the time to document all the comment cards that came into meetings. So if you couldn't go to a meeting, not only were we able to review the meeting notes, but all the index cards, as well as everything that came through email or through the website. And as you read that in chronological order, it was very clear that your committee was very responsive to the feedback that was coming in. And so I just think that was a very clear and transparent process. And when you asked for their feedback, you were sincere in that you wanted their feedback. And I'm curious, as Eric mentioned, as we look forward, because of the way Metro works and city and county planning works, I know a lot of the conversation in this was high-density housing, apartment housing. That's the reality of Western Washington County. And as we move forward, I think, and as we build into South Hillsboro, a lot of our housing is not going to look like what we think it used to look like in Hillsboro, and standalone homes on nice big lots. It's going to be a lot of, and I don't want people to think that that always means mobility, because I just think it's a different type of housing. Lots of people are going to be living in high-density housing, and it doesn't mean they're going to be mobile. It's just that's the kind of housing that this community will have.
Yeah, that's really true. The whole Metro approval of that area increased the density, especially in the South Hillsboro area. Right. We're going to see a lot of
and lots of schools where your schools are going to be like Orenco, Kutama, and Tobias, where they're just right next to each other because it's...
I will say that we won't be caught in quite the same predicament next time. We have a very active long-range planning committee that meets with city officials, county officials, and so we work much more closely. They still don't have to ask our permission, but at least we're at the table with them.
Yeah. So from Mike and then Janine.
Go ahead.
Janine, then Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to make the comment because you talked about the high density, and I think it's important because we've had some discussion as a board to talk about this, and we've talked about how folks really feel like people point folks to live in Beaverton because somehow it's the schools. But I think we also have to consider and think about the type of housing that is in Beaverton, the type of land that is in Beaverton, and that is the bigger reason why when you have folks that move into the area, they move into bigger houses and that type of thing, because our community is moving towards that high density, taller, and so we have to, that's the big reason why folks.
So I would like to also just state for the record that when it comes to boundary changes, we take that responsibility very seriously. We know that people are passionate about the schools that their kids attend. We know that they invest heavily in those schools. And so we don't take this responsibility lightly when we have to make some adjustments. I feel like we've gone through this process with integrity. It's been very transparent. And I feel good about the recommendation that's moving forward based on the process that's been put into place. And I'd specifically like to thank three people. Adam, leading this process. We voted on his leadership when he was out of the room. Appreciate all that you've brought to this process. Beth has been huge in this. Her ability to pull things together is second to none. And Glenn, for you being part of the committee, we just truly appreciate that. And I think your voice was very helpful in this entire process. So thank you all very much.
And to the principals in the room, a lot of you put in a lot of extra time helping us gather information and filtering feedback for us, opening your doors to potential new students. And that was a very warm welcome, as I didn't attend all of the meetings, but when I did, I think that's very reassuring for a parent to meet a principal, staff, parent club president saying, our doors are open and we want you to come and join what we are doing, and how thoughtful you are being, especially at West Union where you're getting such a large change of students about those plans and what that looks like and how you make that a smooth transition for those students. Thank you. We know that's above and beyond what you're already doing in your very busy days. Any other questions or comments before we vote? Okay, so it has been moved by Glenn and seconded by Adriana to approve the boundary change adjustments. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Motion carries. And Beth, I'm sorry, we just gave you a whole bunch of new work.
And John.
And all the principals.
And transportation.
All right. And with that, we're going to move on to our second action item, which is to appoint Citizens Curriculum Advisory members. Travis.
Thank you. It's an honor for me to serve as secretary to the Citizens Curriculum Advisory Committee. We currently have 3 openings on a committee of 13 citizens who advise the board and the district on matters of curriculum development and program development. Before I start, are Melanie and Pamela here? Melanie, thank you for being here.
Sure.
I apologize to everybody. I asked if you were Pamela or Melanie.
She wore a t-shirt. Melanie.
It was awkward, especially with the guys. So thank you for being here. My job tonight is to name the appointees who are put forth by Mr. Akers and Ms. Solomon. We have 3 openings. The first is Pamela Valverde Smith, who will be appointed by Mr. Akers and serve through June 30th, 2014. The second is Diana Santiago, who will be appointed by Ms. Solomon and serve through June 30, 2014. And the third is Melanie Coffey, who will be appointed by Ms. Solomon and serve through June 30, 2015. I also wanted to give a special thanks to Beth and the folks at the Oregonian/Argus. for helping us cast a broader net to attract more citizens to apply for the Citizens Curriculum Committee. The members of the committee themselves asked me to create an advertisement and go on the website and with our media partners and try to get more community members involved in the committee. So thank you, and thanks to Monty and Janine for having screened more candidates and given them your consideration. I appreciate it.
So then I would need a motion.
I move we approve the list of appointees to the Citizens Curriculum Advisory Committee.
Second. Anyone have questions? Wayne.
So just one comment, and I've said this before, and I want to reiterate that this is a valuable opportunity to integrate citizens into the curriculum. And the one feedback I've heard consistently, less consistently, but still present, is the kind of the current nature, as I understand, of the committee being a once a month kind of listen to the work that's happened, doesn't potentially get those citizens integrated early enough in the conversation to have steerable feedback into the process. And I want to continue to encourage you to take advantage of them more than perhaps in the traditional role that was the once a month committee meeting, but somehow engage them individually perhaps integrated into the other teams that are making the early discussions, that make up the discussions. Somehow use them more. They're a valuable resource. I just really want you to move beyond the once a month approval sort of thing to integrate them individually so they can have real representation, help develop the recommendation that comes back to the committee. I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Thank you. My intention is to exhaust them with activity. From the community, we actually have Kim Thayer here, who has been participating as part of the math study team. I'm going to report later on the process around high school math adoption. And Kim has actually gone beyond the monthly opportunity to be embedded with that group and listen to teachers and administrators and other parents make decisions. So that group is active, and it's continually, I think, being revitalized, as you can tell with some new appointees tonight. So thank you for attention.
Any other one?
Yeah, I just also want to echo what Wayne was saying, that the feedback I received is that they definitely want to be more involved in the decision-making process and have more to do than they have. You know, I guess in this feedback that I've had, it's like they're kind of waiting to engage. They really like to engage. So,
thank you.
I'd like to point out a couple things. I wanted to thank all the folks that have applied. It was an overwhelming, I think there was a good turnout of folks that were interested. So I hope there's some way that we can tie those folks in to really not have them lose that momentum to serve on a district committee. My selections, my nominees, I actually approached Melanie long before we started getting feedback from the folks that applied. And the reason I did so is because she's new to our community. She is an elementary parent, and as well as her background and the fact that she has moved into this area from out of state, I think that gives us a perspective. She is a highly intelligent woman that I believe is going to add to the conversation. And she's excited because I think it's not just about engagement, but it's also about, I think the process about it is about awareness. So she's really interested in learning more about Common Core and understanding it. That doesn't, that's not, she just wants to know. And I think that the folks that serve on this committee should be utilized as projection, there's your key communicators. That this is the process and this is what I understand. So I think there is a different level of involvement that's not just about I want to approve and do this and do that. I think there's an intertwining in there that I'm excited about for the committee. I hope I conveyed that correctly. And the others, the other young lady that I appointed is a student, and that was really exciting to be able to have Eddie, who has served on this committee so well and such a poised young man. And now to have someone that he is connected with to pass that baton on and also have that perspective as a student, it was difficult because I saw those parents, those other parents that were on the list, and I do need to make phone calls. But to be able, that I felt really strongly to be able to appoint them. And so hopefully we still have that interest in the future.
Thank you for doing that too. Diana and I and some other students and administrators presented at a conference on Saturday, and she said she would be here tonight, but she has a soccer practice.
Yeah.
So she's a student athlete also, but she's a real promising young leader in our community. She's a sophomore at Hill High, and so thank you for appointing her to the committee. I also wanted to say that we have done a lot of shared learning as a group around Common Core standards and around technology. So while we haven't done a lot of stamping or voting, this year so far, that group is really deep in learning about the changes that are going on in our education system. So they're well trained, I think, and ready to make some good decisions on behalf of students.
I appreciate that, because that's part of our role too. We don't like to be stampers.
Right.
We like to learn about everything and understand, and then we place our vote and go from there. So
all I have to say, Travis, is put them to work and put their mouths in the mustard. Put their hands in that mustard. Find some good stuff online.
Any other questions or comments? So it has been moved by Monty and seconded by Janine to appoint the Citizens Curriculum Advisory Committee members as printed in the agenda. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Welcome to the team. And next up, we have the 2014-2015 school calendar. Debbie's going to walk us through that.
Thank you. So the draft 2014-15 calendar was presented to the board on February 25th for review. We actually gave you two versions, a version A and a version B for review. And that's a little bit different strategy than we typically use. We have received feedback from the community and staff. I didn't receive any questions or feedback from the board during that review time. But overwhelmingly, the support was for calendar B, and that would be the calendar that has conferences during the Thanksgiving week. It seems like the preference for having less interruption during that month and fragmented weeks really was a compelling reason for the people who gave feedback to have it that week versus the prior week on that. There were a couple of other pieces of feedback that we have had long conversations about since receiving it, and I wanted to share those with you. The first one was what we call shadow days, which are those snow makeup days that we included on the calendar this year. We didn't include them, on the draft for next year. We didn't include them this year. We felt it was important to include something next year to give staff and to give parents notice that we may have to make up some days and where those days would fall. What we did was we put a hold on a budget reduction day that is in the spring and said that might be a day that we would make up. We also then put a hold on the week after, 5 days after the end of school. We had numerous conversations about this and came to the conclusion that we probably don't need 5 full days to block off so that people have to hold in reserve that week, that we could probably do with 2 days, the first 2 days after school is out, and then holding that budget reduction day, which would give us 3 days. If in fact something catastrophic happened with weather and we needed more days, we still could have the option to add those, but it would be quite out of the ordinary. And if you look back on our history of snow makeup days, it would be very unusual that we would have to hold that many days in reserve at the end of the school year. So I would like you to consider that, having 2 days held at the end of the year versus 5, and then continue to keep that budget reduction day earmarked. If we do have to have a weather day, we could also use that day. So that was one of the pieces of feedback that I wanted to share with you. The other one was a lot of feedback, and I know you've heard this, about the need for staff to have more PD time, professional development time, and time to collaborate. And so we had some conversations about if we were going to add any time to the calendar to have that happen, because it is a very compelling need, when might that be? Having conversations with the OSP staff to say if we were going to do that, it would probably be valuable to add it sometime in February, which would give us, it's going to be the first year of implementation for SBAC and so forth, and it might really be a valuable time to give staff more time to do that work. However, as we had conversations about that, realizing that we still are not at a full school year next year, that we still have those 2 budget reduction days that we are going to be taking out of the calendar. Next year might not be the year to add a day back for that. It might be that the next year, the 15-16 year, might be a better time, but to acknowledge that we do have a need for some extra time for staff to do this work, and that should be a consideration probably for the next calendar to start thinking about, can we add back some time for our staff for that?
Do you want to make a motion first, or would you like to ask a question?
Oh, well,
Either way.
Go ahead.
Huh? Why don't you make a motion, and then we can give our questions.
So go ahead.
Yeah.
What?
Go ahead with the motion, please, and then we'll take questions and discussion.
I move the Board of Directors approve draft calendar B. Is it a draft still?
It is a draft.
Until we approve it.
Okay.
Second.
Perfect. Now we can do questions and discussion. Geneva, have you first?
So part of this is, I know that I understand the feedback. I was just dismayed for that, because when you look at the calendar of November, there's just not a lot of school days happening there, and that's disconcerting. But I wanted to ask you a question about end of year for PD. Actually, I'll save that.
Yeah, that's the next.
Yes, I'm going to say
the next calendar.
But I'm going to ask you about something you just commented on, where you said, you were talking about that extra PD day for February, and maybe that next year's not the time, even though there's a lot of things that are coming up. I've been in some schools where some principals have had some flexibility in being able to really work to provide, get subs for their, several subs for their building, and then be able to pull those teachers to have that professional development. Is there any idea that maybe we could look into that idea, because if we have the ability to pay for that, I know that'd be a key one, then there wouldn't be lost time for student time, but they would still be able to have.
Right, and that definitely is a possibility, and principals do have some money that they can do that, and we do have principals who are very creative about getting roving subs and so forth, so they could do that. It's just, it's such a big need that I wanted to just make sure that we understand that that is a big need.
It would obviously have to be floating building to building, because we just don't have that many subs.
Correct.
But if you were able to really try to work that out with HR and buildings to be able to help them coordinate that and find out how much that would be.
And we're in a lot of conversations with HEA about this, and trying to work together to collaborate and problem solve with this issue, with trying to get staff more time to do the work and implement everything that we're asking them to do.
Part 2 of my question is classified staff. So we're talking about their hourly. So when there's a snow day, they lose their pay. Is that?
We pay them, and then they owe us the time.
They owe us the time.
So classified staff.
They will also be coming back.
On the snow days. If we have snow days here, they come back too, because they get paid, and then they owe us the time.
Right, and then you're going to just have...
We'd be doing professional development.
Yeah, for them.
With them as well.
Yes.
Okay, I think that was discussed earlier, sorry. I think that's not for me.
Anything else? Nope. Go ahead, Mom.
You mentioned shadow days, and we had 5 and we're going to 2.
Well, that would be my recommendation, is to not have 5 at the end of that whole week after school's out, is to have 2, which has been pretty standard for us when we have had days on the calendar and we haven't had to exceed those. And then to keep, we've got the BR day in the spring that we have earmarked on the calendar to say, if we need, we could use that as a makeup day.
But the copy we see has 5 days here in June.
Yes, you see it as 5. Right, so I think my recommendation is to amend that, so 2 at the end.
So we can amend the motion.
We need to amend.
Yeah, so we can amend it, but let's finish discussion, then we'll amend the motion before we vote.
So, question on creativity on subs. Is the normal behavior of 1 sub per teacher, or do you try to optimize the staffing in a sub situation? shared, I think you mentioned roving sub, and I gathered that to mean one sub covering the teachers.
That it would release teachers, so sometimes that's a strategy, and Steve, you can elaborate on that too, for teachers to be released to do certain things, whether it's to meet together, and the sub would release a certain teacher a certain amount of time and then go and release another teacher.
I wonder if there was an alternative for kind of a wide-scale school activity that didn't require the supervision of a large set of teachers for, I don't know, just either volunteer activities or afternoon science fair, or something that engages the community, creates an educational activity for the whole student body, so that the teachers kind of en masse get the professional development without the requirement for as much substitute.
So we do have some. We have one school I'm thinking of in particular, an elementary school that is pretty creative with how they release teachers. Keep in mind that there's requirements on licensure regarding who's in charge of the students and when, for how long, and that kind of thing. So there's some things to work out there. But we do have at least one school I can think of that they're very creative with how they come up with time for teachers to meet together and to have individual conferences and to do some of the planning that's necessary.
But I think you might be onto something, Wayne,
Which is
looking
like for community engagements, something that can engage large numbers. And certainly you need, there's probably some supervision ratio, but there's already a notion of playground supervision. And you can imagine enough legal supervision from staffing plus a structured activity, engineering week, or art mayhem, whatever, or something that engages them without the requirement for an equivalent staffing that you could employ and actually deploy potentially through an organization to engage the parent-teacher or the parent organization in each school to help organize an activity deliberately for the ability of the staff to engage in professional development.
Okay, and my only comment is, we often call it No School November, and I think that this values the time that we're taking away from instructional time. There's value in conferences, and there's value in teacher having time to do grade prep. So yes, it's not the same as instruction, but conferences are really, really important, whether you have a kinder or a 12th grader. And so I would challenge parents to think more about them not being non-school days. They're just a different type of school day that are just as important to your students' success. And so I think oftentimes parents look at them as a vacation day and plan vacations accordingly, and I would challenge parents to stay in town and go to conferences no matter when they fall.
And we're going to have seniors next year.
Right there is coming. So with that, Mr. Akers, would you like to adjust your motion for the number of days in June? Is that what you were thinking?
Okay, I'd like to amend my motion to reflect what Debbie outlined for us.
Which is to have 2 days held in June, at the end of June rather than 5 days. Okay? And Eric, would you still like to second that motion?
Sure.
Perfect. So moved by Monty, seconded by Eric to approve draft B, making the modification to 2 days in June for inclement weather. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Motion carries. And Debbie, you're not off the hook. Can you walk us through the inclement weather for this year, please?
As you remember back to our snowy February, we missed 2 days of school because of the inclement weather. And so what we would like to do is propose that we make up those 2 days at the end of the school year, and that we don't make them up as student attendance days, that instead we make them up as professional development, staff collaboration days, and so that I want you to understand that we have some contract language with the teachers union that talks about inclement weather days, And what the contract language says, if students are not there, they are not required to come either. So we have worked with HEA and been in conversations, and we've been able to come to the agreement that they would support having teachers come those days, even though the contract states differently. They are in support of that. They recognize, as we do, the need for the professional development and the collaboration time as so critical for our staff. And this won't be just for teachers, it will be for all of our classified staff also. So what we would like to propose is having those 2 days, amending the calendar so that those 2 days will be makeup days. We're going to form a committee of administrators, and we're inviting Maureen from HEA to be on that committee to actually talk about and design what those days will look like for our staff, so that we don't have an exact design for it at this point, but they will work together on designing what that will look like for staff, for licensed staff. And for classified staff, we're going to work on, because their work calendars vary, it won't necessarily be those 2 days, the 16th and 17th. Many of our classified employees, their last day of work is the last student day. So we're working with our supervisors to design what those 2 days will look like for those staff based on the days that they have off for professional development to make that up.
Okay. I can get a motion and then we can move again into questions and discussion.
I move we approve the proposal for the makeup of incremental weather days.
Thank you.
I second.
Okay. Questions, comments for Debbie? Go ahead, Debbie.
What does professional development and collaboration look like for a bus driver or a cafeteria person?
Lauren's right there. Actually, that's a great question, and as we were talking about this, I called over to transportation and talked to Carol's supervisor and said, what could that look like? And she said, we have a lot of trainings that we need to prepare ahead of time for, so I called her several weeks ago, so she said this would be an opportunity for us to provide some training that we might provide in the fall, provided earlier. And Lauren, I don't know if you and Carol have actually talked about what that would look like?
Yes.
Would you be able to? Okay.
But that's about it.
Yeah, and we actually talked about possibly being able to do all the required trainings that we're required to do that take a few hours, and then they do it every fall, to be able to do that. And as part of this, they'll have everybody together, which will allow the drivers in the fall to actually do their routes, drive their routes, and give them more time. It's usually they really run out of time to drive their routes and test their routes. So shifting some of that PD there. So we're in the process of designing it, but we have been in conversations with our departments to say, be thinking about what this might look like.
I have questions in regards to when you talk about transportation. Answered this, but when you're talking about sometimes right after school is over, there is activities that happen that these bus drivers are in use. You have staff members that have they start their summer job, which I totally understand that, but also realistically, I always think it's amazing that staff teachers have one day to close up there, right? And that just doesn't happen. And so, but I'm just, what happens there? Because you have staff members that are...
Correct. So we check to see if our programs, like extended school year and our migrant and summer school and so forth, started, and they don't start the week right after school, because that was one of our concerns, is that they start, and we have a lot of staff that work that, so that they start the week after, which is good for us. Okay. But we recognize we're going to have some people who can't do this. So what they'll do is they can take a leave without pay day, teachers could take a personal day. We work with them to make sure that, because they didn't know, they couldn't prepare for this. So we acknowledge that.
Any other questions? Okay, so it's been moved by Monty and seconded by Adriana to approve the inclement weather makeup proposal. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And Adam's back up with us to approve the Liberty High School turf field.
Yes, at long last, we finally have our final resolution to the Liberty turf field issue. You remember that we did a resolution similar to this with Malum Architects back in October, I think it was, and we've been trying to line up. As you can see from the resolution, we've got 4 different parties to this resolution agreement, and it's taken Larry Brisby, our attorney, that long to get all the players to agree to this resolution. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm just happy that we're to this point finally.
Beautiful, happy.
Yeah.
Okay, if I can get a motion?
I make a motion to approve the resolution authorizing settlement with Robinson Construction Company, Southwest Recreational Industries Grading Unlimited, and Knife River Corporation Northwest.
I will second that.
Okay, questions, comments? Yeah, Jenny.
I guess my comment is going to be thank you very much, because it has been a long process, and you've worked really hard with the folks that have really brought this along and really kept us informed all along the way. So thank you.
So it's been moved by Jean, seconded by Glenn to move forward with Liberty High School Church Building Resolution. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Great. Look at Adam, you can check things off your to-do list today.
So happier and happier as the night goes on.
And next up is to approve the contract for audit services.
We have had Polly Rogers as our audit firm for, well, since before I got here in 2008. I think we've had them since 2004, 2005. And they've done a great job for us. You've met several of their folks who've come and presented to you. But it was time for us to go out and solicit for audit services. We did that, and the recommendation from our team that went through this process is that the board name Grove Mueller Swank, which is an audit firm out of Salem, which also does many of the large firms in Oregon, that we named them as our audit firm for the next 3 years with a 2-year extension.
2-year extension, is that their option or our?
It's at our option.
All right, if I could get a motion?
No, I was trying to let them know they could go out that door. Sorry. I was like, you can't go out that door.
I move that we approve the contract for audit services that just told us about.
Perfect.
Second.
All right, any other questions or comments? Fine.
So was it a matter of time? Was it a concern of getting a better financial deal, or what was the motivation for wanting it? If you had been completely satisfied with the services, is it a conflict of interest issue? Growing too close in bed together, or I mean, is it a financial deal, or just on principle?
For me, it was on principle. It turns out that there's a little bit of savings. We didn't know that going in. The reason we went through the process is that, and Monty, you're an auditor. I think after having this service provided to us for a number of years, we all kind of fall into a routine. They do on their side, we do on our side. I think it's a good thing for us to have some fresh eyes looking at our operations, providing us with info.
It's always good to get fresh eyes on.
Is it traditional in the business, or does it reflect heavily on them for?
No, there are 3 or 4 large firms that have the majority of the business with Oregon school districts, and it's not unusual for school districts to move their business on occasion.
No, it's just common practice.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's absolutely no reflection of Polly Rogers.
That's,
It's just like anything else, you get familiar with people and trust them, but maybe not verify as much as you should. And so it's good to get new eyes and new people.
Okay. And so with that, it's been moved by Eric, seconded by Tony to approve the contract for audit services. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Oh, all those who are not in favor. Look at that, motion carries. I was getting in a rhythm there. Adam.
Yeah.
Just keep on going. Again, we're just checking off your to-do list.
Yep. So before you tonight, we have a group of emergency egress lighting improvements. These are all things that are on our high priority maintenance list. that we had budgeted for within the general fund. We've actually broken up the projects into 5 different projects. 2 of those are going to be above the threshold that require board approval. This is one of them. So what you have is a proposal for group lighting number 2 in this includes Glencoe, Evergreen, Jackson Elementary, and Patterson Elementary schools. And the recommendation is that we award this to Global Electric, which also happened to be the low bidder on this project. I know that Lauren is here if you have any questions regarding the projects themselves.
Great. So if we can start with the motion and then we'll do questions and discussion again.
I make a motion to authorize the administration to award the contract to Group 2 emergency egress lighting improvements to Global Electric for $285,500.
Second.
Perfect. Anyone have questions or comments for either Adam or for Lauren this year?
I just had one question. You said that the bid you chose happened to be the low one. What were the other criteria that made Global a better choice?
The only criteria in this case is the price.
Okay, so it didn't just happen to be the low one, that's why you chose it?
I'm sorry?
No, just Adam said the choice happened to be the low one, implying you chose them for another reason.
But
to clarify.
It's purely cost.
Okay.
But that wasn't the only criteria that you judged the bids on, I think is what Eric's asking.
Well, we prepare specifications specifically to do a certain job, and everybody, if they're doing their job right, they're bidding the exact same thing across the board that everybody else is. And whoever comes in with the lowest price is, unless there's something wrong with it, obviously something wrong with it, it's almost always awarded to the low price.
Were these pre-qualified bidders? Were these on a?
Yes.
Okay, so they've already been through
These
this.
are ones that companies you have confidence in general.
Did you say you broke them up into different groups?
8 groups.
Is
The reason is because there's 28 schools involved total. And if you package all of that into one contract and not know what the funding is, not know what's coming down the road, there's potential to take some work away from a contractor. And once they've planned out their months in advance, that really hurts. So by breaking it up, we can bid as long as we want to until we run out of money, and then whatever's left is pushed into the next fiscal year or something.
So group 3 or 4 might go to a different bidder.
That's possible, yes. Right now, we have taken bids on 3 groups, and there are 2 different contractors.
But only one of those required board approval.
Correct. It's a pretty wide range of value on these groups. Group 1 was $34,000.
Would you refresh my memory, what was the threshold for board approval?
$150,000.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, so it's been moved by Janine and seconded by Monty to award bid number 2 for Group 2 emergency egress lighting to Global Electric. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Adam. And our final action item of the night is to approve the RFP contract for bandwidth services to Tom.
So, good evening, and again, I apologize, this is kind of a whirlwind process. I know we prepared you last time that we have a contract coming. We don't have a finalized contract to present to the board right now, and we're still looking at requesting approval for up to the worst case scenario that we provided in the situation page, although we do know as of today that it's going to be much better than the worst case scenario. I use that number in case we could not get an RFP respondent that we could apply E-rate discounts for, and assuming that our prices stayed exactly the same as they were now. That being said, Comcast has won the RFP that we, in conjunction, partnered with Tigard Walton School District, Beaverton, Forest Grove, and Northwest Regional ESD. We had our first contract meeting with Comcast today, and all 5 of those entities were here earlier today. But I want to give you an example of what we're looking at. We still have some design considerations that we have to do. There's a couple of different ways we can architect the network. whether we want to go with a 1, 3, or 5-year contract. My recommendation right now, I'm looking at the pricing, is that a 5-year contract will be in our best interest because of the pricing that they came in with was so aggressive. What we're looking at, for example, just to give you an idea on how the pricing has changed. Currently, right now, we're paying approximately $635 a month for a 100 meg connection. So all of our elementary schools connect back to the AC here at 100 megs. That's currently $635. If we kept it at the same 100 meg for all of our elementary schools, that price on a 5-year contract decreases to $360. So what we're asking you here today, even though we don't have a contract, is your approval for Adam to sign a finalized contract with Comcast when we get the contract completed. Right now, we are in the middle of a 7-day waiting period. That 7 days is up on Thursday because of an RFP. There has to be that 7-day. We wouldn't have been able to get it to the board in time for this board meeting had we waited for that. The next board meeting was in April, which the E-rate window closes on March 26th for us. So we have to have a finalized, at least the first signature of a contract in order for our E-rate application to be eligible for those discounts through the federal program. So I come before you asking your permission for Adam to sign in good faith a contract that we finalize with Comcast, and at the next board meeting we'll bring back the very specific details of what that entails.
Okay, so you're asking for the 5-year commitment versus the 2-year, so I'm assuming that the price is much more aggressive on the 5 than the 2.
Oh, then on the 3, we have options for 1, 3, or 5-year.
Okay.
Yeah. Currently, when we start looking, and it's when we get to gigabit traffic, and the breakdown is as we're about doubling our capacity or our need for capacity on bandwidth on an 18-month basis. Mm-hmm. It is more cost effective for us to start out with, and I don't want to try and get too far into the weeds.
I understand.
If we start anticipating 1 gigabit needs for our elementary schools, the port costs are incrementally cheaper if we start under the 5-year. So it will take us, if we do a 5-year contract, it starts paying for itself at year 3. If we do a 3-year contract, that pricing, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't pencil out if you do it all the way out.
Is it your sense?
Can I have you pause and make a motion first and then do questions?
Okay. I guess I make a motion that we give him the authority for Adam to sign the contract in good faith.
I second. Perfect, thank you.
So is it your sense then that this aggressive pricing is to head off a bid by Google coming through?
I don't think it related to that at all. Knowing how slow Comcast is, how big they are nationally, the announcement here was well into the RFP process. I think they really wanted to make a good faith effort, knowing that the franchise agreement, which we've been working under, they wanted us off of that. But they also wanted to know that they supported the schools and they've appreciated the partnership we've been in with them. I can see once more dark fiber options come available in our area, that will get better. But we're at best case scenario breaking ground with Google Fiber in 3 years, and that doesn't guarantee it goes to all of our schools. I'm looking at it a little bit different way. There's some other things going on, but at the 3-year break, we still don't save enough money. The other 2 years that we would add on that contract, it makes more sense for us to do that and let some of the dark fiber providers come in. One of them possibly being Google. There's some other works afoot from other agencies.
And one last in-the-weeds question, I apologize, I'll stop interrupting you. So with this architecture you're talking about, you mentioned 100 megabyte to our elementary schools, and everything's still feeding into our district office. Mm-hmm. Are you then anticipating this going to the gigabit for the elementary schools?
For the elementary schools, what we're playing around with on the architecture is when we look at a 500 meg, if we increase our bandwidth at our elementary schools fivefold, for 500 megabit connection back to here, it increases what we're currently paying by $5 a month.
Wow, that's fantastic.
So 5 times the bandwidth for our elementary schools, we can move to currently the gigabit bandwidth that our high schools currently have back to the AC. We save about $54 a month right now, where the big benefit in this new contract is they put pricing in for 2 gigabit, 3 gigabit. It used to be if you wanted 2 gigabit, you had to buy 2 gigabit circuits. Now they're putting in 10 gig Ethernet connections, and we can slice and dice that. So used to be jumping from 1 gig to 2 gig would be from $900 to $1,800. Now it goes from $846 to $1,100. So it's, yeah, so we can jump to here at the AC very quickly, and there's no penalty to do that.
It's quite possible that I would need some professional development. I mean,
I apologize.
My mind's going,
You didn't catch that.
three things. I mean, I trust Adam. I trust you in your line of work and how your dedication to the district and everything. My concern, I thought about Google Fiber and what a 5-year contract, when that's going to be potentially coming down. I'm concerned because I don't trust Comcast, just from personal. And so when you say they lock you in, because I've had some of my own personal with locking in, and then I have to call them every month and say, why did you raise my bill to $129? So
one of the things we did right into the RFP, which we currently have in our current contract with them over the PCN, the MAC grant, is that we can reduce by 5% or 3 circuits, which is ever is greater for any district, a year without penalty.
Okay.
So as dark fiber comes in, let's say in 3 years, Google comes in and they can provide that, and we think that's a better way to go. We can lop off 5% of our circuits without any penalties. And so we're not locked in that way. And so we've got that built into each of the contracts. So we have a little bit of wiggle room because we know no dark fiber provider is going to just take all 38 of the facilities that we've got to connect back to here and have it in overnight. It's going to be an incremental process.
Okay. And then it's a shame because it seems like such a significant investment for bandwidth. And so, when you look at the city, I mean, you wonder if there's any way that you go anywhere in the city and you're on wireless. And it's like, why couldn't we have that partnership?
Well, but you're also looking at, I mean, we're kind of comparing apples to oranges there because the amount and the aggregate bandwidth that we're trying to consume from one single location with 20,000 students and 2,000 staff is very different than 30 people in Starbucks.
Yeah, so, it's a shame that we couldn't look at, hey, what if we got your gigabyte and whatever. Sorry.
And so we've actually had conversations with the city about how to partner in that. We're too early at this point.
Okay.
And what they have, and the other thing I'd like to say is, I'll look right at the camera when I say it. Janine Salmon's comments do not represent the views of the Hillsboro School District.
When do they?
Opposed to Janine, I understood all the gigabyte talk, but I don't know what dark fiber is. Can you help us with that?
Yeah, dark fiber is basically a provider will come in and they will lay fiber optics cable between 2 locations. And we put the optics, we put the equipment on either end to light it up. And that means we're in control with the quality of service or the Q&Q service, how fast it goes. Because it's light, it will go at any speed we want it to. So we have control of the bandwidth and how we shape the traffic that goes across that. Right now, what we're asking is Comcast is to provide the care and maintenance of that equipment, provide the equipment, and we tell them how we want that shaped. And that's part of the conversations around the contract right now is what can we run over that? Can we run unicast, multicast? How does that look? And how do we make sure all of the traffic that we're currently doing moves across that?
So dark fiber opposed to
lit fiber services.
I mean, they just provide the wire and you connect it yourself.
Yeah, essentially is the way it works.
Is this no last mile problem?
No, they've already built out the last mile to all of our buildings. We already have connections. It should be a pretty seamless transition with, they're going to swap out some head-end equipment at each one of our sites, or actually here, and we won't have to go through any construction pieces. We won't have to be breaking any sidewalks or anything to get fiber in because they've already got the fiber in, or in some cases copper.
So time frame?
We can choose to bleed over into July if we want. We'll be ready to go July 1. I'm not certain we'll want to switch all of our sites July 1. We'll probably do a phased-in approach, but they've already given us assurance that we will be held harmless for only paying one set of bills. So they'll let us continue to run on the PCN network that we're currently on while we make that transition over without having to pay those costs in a transitional phase, 30 days, 60 days. They did this for Salem Kaiser. Salem Kaiser was pushed off their franchise network last year. They've stepped through this, so they have a pretty good idea of what, and that was 75 sites.
Okay.
So it went pretty well.
Any other questions or comments, Glenn?
Just one last point. I really like the idea of improving the connectivity at the elementary level because I thought 100 megabyte is very small for 500 kids. And we're opening up our wireless all over the place. And we have our challenges, obviously, with budgetary and whatnot, but I think that's a really great direction to pursue to do that.
Yeah, I'm anticipating that we're not going to save any money on this because of trying to anticipate the needs and the growth that we're doing in the aggregated bandwidth that comes out of here. It's going to be pretty close to what we're currently paying this year, but much more expanded bandwidth that we'll have available.
What caught my eye was like Beaverton was showing like 1 gigabit for the elementary schools right in the RFP.
They're already running at 1
Yeah,
gig.
so we're way behind where they are.
Right now, all of our elementary schools are at 100 megs. All of our high schools and middle schools are at a gigabit. The one exception is South Meadows and
Witch Hazel.
Witch Hazel, thank you. I'm so sorry. They're connected. They have an fiber interconnect between the buildings. So Witch Hazel runs through South Meadows, 1 gig connection back to here.
Cool.
And then we have 2 gigabits out to the internet from this building.
Any other questions for Dawn? Comments? So it's been moved by Glenn and seconded by Adriana to approve the RFP, which means trusting Adam to finish this work and not go over.
It's trusting Dawn. I didn't understand any of it.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And any opposed, motion carries. Board members, I warned you that we may be long tonight. I'm wondering if you would like a 5-minute leg stretch. I think we have about 30 more minutes. Would that be helpful for a 5-minute recess, or want to just keep going?
I would like to go through. I know we have people waiting to
Okay, power through?
Sure.
Here we go, awesome. Okay, so with that, our first report tonight is from Travis.
It's a privilege for me tonight to introduce 2 folks who do spectacular things for young women in our community. Cecilia Hiro is here tonight. Cecilia has served our community for over 10 years as a member of the OSU Extension Services 4-H program. She serves students in Forest Grove, Beaverton, and Hillsboro. She focuses her work on minority students, at-risk youth, and their families. She spent 4 years working with the Adelante Mujeres and Adelante Chicas programs, and she won't brag about this, but I'll brag on her behalf. She was just awarded the Oregon Commission for Women 2013 Women of Achievement Award. With her is Cristina Delgado, who is the main facilitator of the Adelante Chicas after-school sessions that they do to serve students at Glencoe High School, Hillsboro High School, South Meadows Middle School, and Evergreen Middle School. So together, Cristina and Cecilia are here to talk about the Chicas program and the work they do. And gracias por todo lo que hacen para nuestros estudiantes.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and share our work. My name is Cecilia Giron. I am the director of Adelante Chicas Youth Program here in Washington County. We work with 2 school districts, Forest Grove School District and Hillsboro School District. We work for a nonprofit, Adelante Mujeres, which Adelante Chicas is a program of Adelante Mujeres. Adelante Mujeres is a nonprofit in Forest Grove that supports low-income Latino women and their families, especially focusing 3 areas: education, entrepreneurship, and leadership. We'll share a little bit about what Adelante Chicas is and what we do. Adelante Chicas is an innovative youth development program empowering Latina girls to develop their leadership potentials, adopt healthy lifestyles, as well as develop cultural identity and achieve academic success with high school graduation and college enrollment. And what do we do? Adelante Chicas supports adolescent Latina girls through bilingual after-school workshops, family support, community involvement, and also involves the whole family in a very holistic approach, and provide also workshops for parents to prepare them for college readiness. And as we see, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. As we see, we started in 2011, 2012 with Hillsboro School District. The first school that we started was Evergreen Middle School with the support of Chris Johnson and the principal, Brian. Thank you. And then from that, we moved to 2012 to support, because of a group of mothers that came and made a meeting with Principal O'Malley and said, we heard that Adelante Chicas is Evergreen. What happens? Why don't we have Adelante Chicas in South Mills? So the families met with Principal O'Malley, and O'Malley called me and said, okay, what is Adelante Chicas all about? I want to talk to you. So he invited us and we talked about the program, and we started in 2012 there at South Meadows. And 2013-14, which is this school year, we have started Adelante Chicas at Glencoe High School and Hillsboro High School. So now we're reaching 102 young Latina girls, and we focus on supporting the families of the girls as well as the students. And we support migrant students because some of the funding comes from migrant department, and those funding are specifically for the students that come from migrant families. We also offer and open the doors to the students that are interested, that are low-income Latina girls, and we go based on the free or reduced lunch. We have 4 sites now, Hillsboro, as I mentioned, Glencoe, and Evergreen. We also offer individual development accounts. It's a 3-to-1 savings plan that we offer to our chicas. For every $1 they save, they get $3 to save. In a period of 3 years, they can save up to $12,000 if they save the max. And that will be paying for their college once they graduate from high school. As of now, we have over 63 sessions within the Hillsboro School District sites that we work with, and we have 75 new participants this year. And we have 6 active volunteers at each site. We have bilingual biculture facilitator as well as volunteers from the community. Especially we look for students that are in college that they can come and mentor and tutor these girls. And give me a few seconds. So the students did an activity, I Have a Dream, to commemorate Martin Luther King. And some of the students, one of the students said that. So they also have dreams, and big dreams, and not just for themselves, but also for the community. So it's important to keep supporting these young girls that they also have big dreams. And Christina will talk a little bit more about the sessions and what happens during session and what do we offer during the 90 minutes that the students are there. But before I finish, I just wanted to say that last year we had 100% graduation rate, as well as those girls enrolling into 4-year college or 2-year college. And Christina will also share with you some field trips that we have been taking these girls to. As of right now, we have 22 students enrolled in the individual development account program. If you have any questions, we'll be here to answer.
Hi, good evening. My name is Cristina Delgado, and as Cecilia has mentioned, I'm the after-school facilitator for middle school, Evergreen Middle School, South Meadows, Hill High, Hillsboro High School, and Glencoe High School. And briefly, I will be touching on some of the topics that we have covered throughout the year during the after-school program. And during the first quarter, we have covered topics related to leadership, self-identity, relationship with peers, and friendship. During the second quarter, we have covered topics related to goal setting. We have had visitors from Portland State University, PCC, Portland Community College, and we have also touched on how to be successful in school. We've had visitors, psychologists coming into our sessions to talk to students about different career options, note-taking, volunteering, internship opportunities, as well as developing their writing skills through writing essays and also writing on their journals, healthy eating and increasing their lifestyles, their healthy lifestyles. And we have also touched on self-esteem and improving their self-esteem, feeling better about themselves and developing those leadership skills. We have also touched on social media and women, especially Latina women, the role that we play in society as well. And for the last quarter, which is going to be April and May, we will be touching on financial literacy. So the girls will have an opportunity to learn about managing their accounts and learning more about saving for college. And they will also learn about recycling. And then almost towards the end, we'll cover a section that's focused on what's next. So we've had a whole year of empowerment through leadership and building relationships and what's next now. So Nasa Rodriguez, who is the Dean of Students at PCC, Portland Community College, she's gonna come to session and she's gonna deliver a session about empowerment and cultural identity to girls. And just some of the field trips that we have been Latina panel. We've had a Latina panel, and Olga Acuña was actually one of the panelists. We've shown a Girl Rising documentary, also at the public library. And we've had a Path to Scholarship session. So we have approximately 6 to 7 seniors, including girls from Glencoe High School and Hillsboro High School. And each of those girls have been taking Path to Scholarships workshops, but they have learned about writing essays and filling out applications for scholarships. We have taken approximately 60 students to Linfield College, and we have visited Portland State University, approximately 40 students. We have taken approximately 40 students to Intel, to the Women International Day, and those were students who were highly interested in STEM careers. We have taken approximately 8 students to Timbers game, so that way they could explore other options, as I know we have many students who are interested in playing soccer as professionals. And we have done Skate World, and one of the most recent field trips events that we've had have been taking 3 of our students from Forest Grove, Hillsboro School District to see Justice Sonia Sotomayor. I think that was last week, I believe.
And that's a student from
Lorena
Hillsboro.
from Hillsboro High School. She's a senior this year, applying to PCC.
And I just want to share, because I think this is very powerful. So one of the students who was there asked Sonia Sotomayor, what message do you have for young students, high school students? And she said not to be afraid. And so when that ended, I asked the girls, who wants to go and take a picture with Sonia Sotomayor? Oh, we do. But Lorena said, I really want to take a picture with Sonia Sotomayor. And I said, okay, I'm going to go with you guys to the front and then see if we can take a picture with her. So some of the girls were saying, they're going to kick us out. Oh, no. Okay, what did she say? What was the advice that she gave you?
not to be afraid. But even though we were walking and, there was some resistance. But when we got there, I asked them again, because there was two guards, big ones, tall, security guards. And so they were saying, okay, everybody should be on the back except those that have asked questions to Sonia Sotomayor. And so she looked at me and she goes, we're not going to be able to get in there. And I said, we are. You have a picture? And the rest said, okay, we're out of here. So everybody started, the rest of the people started walking back. And I grabbed Lorena. I said, Lorena, you really want to go there? She said, yes. So I grabbed her and I said, okay, let's stand up here. And I have my camera. And so I tell the person, I said, she wants to take a picture. And she goes, well, she hasn't, she asked a question. And I said, she wants to take a picture. So I pushed Lorena and she said, okay. And so she went and got a picture. So you have to be persistent. You have to be willing to take the risk and not to be afraid. So I just want to share the story. That this girl was brave enough to stand up by my side and she got a picture. So that was the story that I wanted to share.
And we have also been very successful during our parent workshops and parent gatherings. This is our first parent gathering at Hillsboro High School, and I believe we had approximately 80 people attended. And then we have also been very successful at the parent workshops and parent gatherings at Glencoe High School as well. And I would like to take a moment to invite Brooke Nova to share with us the story that she has. And Brooke Nova has been very supportive to us, to our program at Glencoe High School.
Well, hello. I was not prepared to speak, but when I saw these ladies were here tonight, I had to take a moment to share what an amazing program this has been for our high school this year. The minute that we met this summer, I knew that we were going to hit it off and we were going to create something really special at our high school, so that it's been a complete joy to work with them. I was invited to help out with a recent family night. The family feel that was created within their workshops, it was so fun. It really, I think, embraced what we've been working towards, which is community and schools working together to empower our youth. And that it was so much fun. I have been really fortunate to experience our students who have been in the program and how proud they are to be chicas. One of our students I want to share a story with, she is a senior in high school this year. She was one of our Red Zone students. The transformation she has made through going through Chicas has been amazing. She's applied for FAFSA now. She's applied for a PCC Future Connect scholarship. She is on her way to going to post-secondary ed, which is what we're about. So that has really been the work of Chicas and being in our schools, and that's just been so much fun and rewarding and exciting to see. So I also really appreciate how much in line they are with the whole child feeling, and with the work of the growth mindset. I mean, you heard them speak a little bit about that, but that's so much what Chicas is naturally about, and that's so much what we talk about within our schools. K-12 is that growth mindset for our students, and that's been really rewarding. And I also really appreciate too the 7th through 12th grade college and career pathway that they're setting up. I mean, it's wonderful that they start working with these girls in 7th grade, and that we get to continue to work with them all the way to 12th grade. That's a lot of the work that we're doing in college and career currently, and it's nice to know that we have such strong community partnerships that work with us to support our students. So it's been a joy and a pleasure, and I look forward to future work with them. So thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you so much, Brooke. You also have been a big help for us. And you touched about partnerships and collaboration. That is a key here. We can't do it ourselves. We have a lot of partners, a lot of collaborators, volunteers that help us throughout the way. Funding that we receive from my department is not a lot. $7,500 at each school, that's not a lot. And I'm not here to ask for money. I'm just here to really to share about what Chicas is all about. And we're here to support you. We're here to work together with you. We're here to embrace our community and to continue supporting our young children, our young Latina girls, to look more than just high school, because they do have the potentials. But the work that we have done here in Hillsboro School District, it's because of the principals at each school, it's because of the counselors at each school, it's because of the teacher advisors at each school. We are also part of this partnership, but we want to be clear from the beginning or from the get-go what will be our roles and responsibilities and what are we going to be accountable for. That's very key. And that's what we try to do. We try to really, truly partner and support on anything we can to bring resources to the families as well. We're being very successful bringing our parents as well, really trying at an early age. With Hillsboro School District, we work with third grade graders all the way to high school, that's our model. Our model is to work with younger girls starting really early and start pushing about college readiness, start also involving the parents and also getting the parents to understand the educational system, public system, or K-12 system, very early age. And that's what we do. We are here to support, we're here to help. My conversations with some of the principals, especially with Olga Cunha through the migrant department, has been that hopefully in the future we'll be able to bring more resources to the younger girls, and we hope to do that. At this point, our staff capacity, we're not there, of course, because of funding, but majority of our funding comes from grants, comes from individual donors, as well as also foundations. So our hopes are that in the future we will continue to look for those funding, and if there is opportunities to partner and bring this program to third graders, or even, Olga was saying, chiquititas, meaning K through 12. So I just wanted to share that with you, and thank you for giving us that opportunity to come and share about the program and also the work that the Hillsboro School District is doing. And I really appreciate that you guys are open to non-traditional formal education. And as we know, statistics shows that if students have after-school engagement or after-school activities, as well as during summer, that they will still connect it, and that they will have ways not to disconnect. And Chicas is a year-round program. We also offer a soccer academy. We also offer 3 capstone camps, and all of that is free. We offer STEM camp. We offer healthy lifestyles camp, and also an arts and culture camp.
Does anyone have questions or comments? I'm sorry, Janine.
I was just going to say, do you have 104 graduates? Is that what you had said? And then you have 75 new?
No, these are the students that we're working with. Currently 104 and 75 new this year.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. It's a fantastic program, and hopefully you can work your way to help support those elementary, and if anything, to be able, these students sound, they're becoming community leaders and becoming stronger women, that maybe they can go into the elementary schools and show when they go to Evergreen and they go to South Meadows, that they will have these opportunities, because what a fantastic program that you're offering these students.
And we have former students that have graduated from that program that right now are mentors and volunteers.
Wow, it's fantastic.
Monty?
What would it take to get you in all of our secondary schools?
More funding. I think that's it. We have the curriculum, we have the structure, we just need funding to hire new facilitators, but then go by culture facilitators that also have come from the background. It's critical for us because they need to relate to really what the needs are from our children and our families that we're reaching.
And that's $7,500 a school, is that what I heard?
That's what we're getting now, but that's only like 10% of what we pay. Adelante Mujeres picks up the 90%. But I mean, we can work this out, of course.
Have your people call our people.
How long have you been receiving the title dollars, the partnership students that you've been doing since you guys have been at Evergreen from the very beginning?
Since we were in Evergreen, yeah.
Okay.
That's the migrant only.
Yeah, only migrant.
Only migrant. Yeah, no Title I.
I'm glad to see, I've seen in other school districts that we partner, and we do, I know it's not a lot, but even the 10% that we give, and adelante, I'm familiar with the mujeres, I didn't get involved with the chicas, but you guys are doing some great work. Keep it up, and let's start gathering some data on some of these kids to start looking for funding, because we know it's turning them around, right, Brooke? So, we can just pick it up. All right.
Anyone else? Thank you so much. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, tell me, you need to make your offer right now. So my offer is that because we're running long and because we have an April 8th meeting at which I'm going to do a self-evaluation, if you would like us to table the strategic plan performance update, we'd be happy to do that.
And the information is already live on the website or through your teamwork, so it is, you can review it before then. Okay. Everyone's in agreement. Do we need an official something to skip over a report? Since it's a report and not an action item, we're okay to just, the report is, if you want to read the report, go to the website. Perfect. So then I'm going to pass it over to Steve to walk us through the math adoption update.
Okay, we have a brief update for you on where we're at with the high school math adoption. Travis is going to walk you through some process that he's been facilitating with our teachers, the Citizens Curriculum Advisory Committee, as well as students and other parents in our community regarding what they would like to do for our high school math adoptions. He's going to let you know where we're at with that, and they've got a small request that they've sent our way, and we'd like to get your opinion on it.
Thank you, Steve. My outcome for tonight would be to tell you where we are with the math study team, and then I'm looking for thumbs up and just an understanding of where we are in the process and support from the board on something that's unprecedented in terms of our own research and development as teachers. So I'm here on behalf of the teachers and administrators and students and parents who are part of the math study team to share this work. Briefly, technology is changing the way that we teach and learn in our schools. Not only the availability of mobile devices, but the availability of apps and open source materials have changed the game for students and teachers, particularly around differentiation and personalized learning opportunities. Right now, the way that that's impacting us is that our math study team is investigating how to further our math curriculum for high school and potentially adopt materials or technology that would help us deliver the best product to our students. The high school math study team is in the middle of a long process to define our math programs and practices, identify resources and professional development that will support students and teachers. Our math study team is an open team. We invited every teacher and administrator in our high schools math teachers and administrators from high schools to be a part of the team. Right now the team meets and has a consistent membership of about a dozen teachers, about 6 administrators, 3 or 4 parents each time, 3 or 4 students each time, and 2 Citizens Curriculum Advisory Committee members each time. We have subcommittees for the math study team to research professional development, materials, technology, how to serve diverse learners, including TAG, students with special needs, and bilingual students. And we have a special committee this time for parent and community engagement and outreach. The challenge that we have in front of us right now as a math study team is perhaps we're in the first cycle of adoption where paper textbooks are not the best choice for our investment. And if not, we're asking ourselves, then what? What would be the best thing for us to invest in for math instruction in our school district? Since we've asked ourselves that question, the Oregon Department of Education has actually changed what they expect us to do in terms of our adoption cycles, what they'll do to support us and what our actions are. Namely, they are not currently building a list of textbooks that we can choose from. What they're doing is offering a facilitated adoption process whereby we can partner with them, investigate open source materials, print materials, digital materials, and choose together what might work for students in schools. So that makes this process way more complicated than it's been before. I'm here to update you and tell you what a piece of our team has decided they'd like to do in the short term. It's our plan in the summer of 2014 to partner with ODENB, one of the first districts along with some others from Southern Oregon and in our own region, to go through the facilitated adoption process. But to get smart, two of our subcommittees have merged. The Materials Committee and the Technology Committee have merged. We've partnered teachers with folks from our tech department, including Don Wolf and his team, to investigate how materials and technology might be part of the same puzzle for students. The team has met and proposed an action research project to answer this question. What data do we need to move forward confidently and responsibly with a math adoption that might include technology? What they'd like to do during the Action Research Project is either pool or purchase enough technology that at each comprehensive high school we can have a studio classroom where students are in a tech-enhanced environment, where a math teacher gets the professional development they need to see what it's like to use Khan Academy or CK12 to drive the instruction, and that the students have the technology to access it. It brings up a lot of questions for us, and I want to share a couple of the values of the committee before I ask to do something unprecedented. One of them is that we're going to do what's best for students. Another value of the committee is that we want to be the most responsible that we can with taxpayer dollars and make a responsible choice. The other is that we want to be completely transparent and clear with our communication, not only to the Citizens Curriculum Committee and the board, but to parents, stakeholders, teachers, anybody involved in our schools, because this may result in something new about the way kids learn math. So what the committee has asked for me to pave the way for with you tonight is that they are interested in investing about $45,000 or $50,000 of the $400,000 that is the chunk of money that they can invest in materials adoption. They'd like to invest that in technology for students and professional development for themselves to run the Action Research Project this spring. With help and support from the tech department, we get devices in the hands of kids in classrooms and invite parents, other students, other teachers in to see what that looks like. We'd be gathering data via student surveys, teacher surveys, and a rubric from the Oregon Department of Education on do these materials work, and we'd be answering some of the questions that we've gotten from stakeholders so far. When I proposed this to the Citizens Curriculum Committee for their feedback, they had a list of concerns, including what are the effects of screen time on kids, what's the damage and loss estimate if you give devices to students, do we have a wireless capability to make this work in each of our high schools? And so originally, immediately, we had 9 Citizens Curriculum Committee members there. 5 of them said, you should have done this 2 years ago. 4 of them said, we have more concerns and we'd like to know more from the committee. I've called those 4, and of them, I haven't gotten a hold of 2 of them, but the 2 of them had said that once they heard the details of how the action research was going to be run, they're in full support to have us invest in that money early. One of the main concerns is what happens to those machines after, or the devices after the action research is over, and the answer to that is they'll stay in the hands of math teachers at those high schools. Be an early adoption of technology to support math instruction, regardless of the outcome. Could be that the end of our process is that we buy paper textbooks from Holt. We don't know. So I come to you with the support of the Citizens Curriculum Advisory Committee looking for some either thumbs up and/or a list of concerns that you might have that you'd like us to research during our process. We do have a comprehensive list of what if this, what about that? I'd love to know just very quickly what the feedback of the board is on, would you like us to continue with that action research project? Do you see any problems with our stewardship of resources? And what would be your hopes for outcomes?
I'm going to start with Eric and we'll work our way down.
Yeah, as a former member of the Citizens Curriculum Advisory Committee, I think it's really good. I love the way you're involving them more this year than in last year's CPM adoption.
Thank you.
One other thing I really like about this is, I had a big criticism of the CPM adoption last year because it seemed like ultimately the only piloting that was done before this was, spread to all our middle schools was 2 weeks of, of teaching in classrooms. And that didn't seem to me like it was an appropriate level of study for something that's such a major long-term commitment for the district. So I really like the idea that you're putting together this, more extensive, pilot study where you're really going to experience the curriculum for an extended period of time and really get a good answer as to, is this the direction to go? So it sounds really good to me.
Thank you.
Did you have any questions or comments?
No, I think I'm here $50,000 to invest and to pilot and involve parents and teachers. Yeah.
What's the size of the pilot? How many different classrooms?
A minimum of 4. We'd like us to have 4 be fully equipped with a one-to-one setup for students. But there are teachers at those schools who, for example, have won some of our mini grants, and they might participate alongside with a different setup. The pure research, action research project would be, say, 37 kids in a classroom at each of our 4 schools.
So there'd be 1 classroom in each of the high schools. At what grade level or what topic, subject?
Between algebra and algebra 2. So algebra, geometry, algebra 2, and that would be the focus of our of the action research project. I actually have a list. I don't have it open, but there are teachers identified across the schools who teach those different levels, and we'll be comparing notes about how, for example, something like CK12 would be, how robust it is across those different course offerings.
So the pioneering would be a specific classroom of students that exist today with a teacher, and you're talking this year.
Correct.
Dropping in April or something and doing a quarter or months, or how long?
The idea would be to do it at least a month before the end of the school year.
On completing the curriculum that they were already scheduled to cover, but
what they would be doing would be planning the units that would be the normal sequence of the content they'd be covering during the month of April with the materials instead of out of the textbook they're using, out of CK12 and or Khan Academy. There's a list of 8 or 10 open source materials that the tech department and the math teachers have identified as viable open source curriculum sources.
And so would each of the classrooms be piloting a different one of these options?
Potentially.
Or trying to swap it? I know in visits with the CPM classroom, and I'm going in this week somewhere else, one of the comments was that it took a little bit of time and energy of the teacher to kind of reorient their mind and the students on how they interact with the curriculum. That's why it would need to be a significant amount. And I wonder if the month is going to get you through the transition, or all the feedback will be muddled by transition issues.
So that came up with students at the table and the teachers at the table. What kind of a ramp up would we need? What kind of support would we need? And what we've talked about is how important it is to give the professional development to support to those teachers that are building that studio classroom, especially for the sake of folks who come in and visit and would like to see a quality product. And then the students brought up loud and clear, we'd like you to get our feedback too, because doesn't it matter what our learning experience is in the transition, in using the devices, in having access at home to wireless or not. And so those questions are great ones. And what we hope to do is provide individual support to at least the 4 teachers who would be active in the action research from our tech folks and our teaching and learning department upstairs too. Thank you for bringing that up.
So my question is, do you have enough time, it being the end of March and having to purchase technology, get it in place, train teachers while completing those testing, getting ready for finals in June? Like, is the window big enough?
Barely. So the team met today, and there are some, I was just reviewing their notes, and it looks like if we choose something like Chromebooks, it would be a turnaround that would give us just barely enough time to run a pilot. So that's why I'm coming to you today, hoping to get back to this team tomorrow and say, I saw your notes, the board says this, and let's proceed.
And my second question is, if for some reason they try it and hate it, does that shortchange how much money you have to buy something different?
The only purchase would be for the digital devices themselves. Potentially we'd purchase a license for paid digital resource, but the purpose of the pilot would be to identify that there are resources out there that don't cost us money to buy, and that we should divert our resources toward the devices and the professional development and supports for students and teachers. So if we were disappointed with the experience, we would still have the devices to move instruction forward, regardless of what we ended up buying. So, for example, a lot of the paper textbooks come with a digital version now, and so we'd still be equipping ourselves to do the digital version of whatever publisher thing we bought.
We have flexibility budgetary. I know you would take 50,000 out of the current budget for textbooks, but should it fail or whatever, we're on the other side planning technology upgrades and that
can you move money around?
Can you move money around? May that technology already be something you would be purchasing? So we can approve it this way from a budgetary standpoint, but in the end, it doesn't have to appear to be a loss to the.
I agree. And we've got a salary reduction program that can come right out of track.
I paid for a lot of these projects.
Monty?
I'm looking forward to the results. I think it's what we should be doing.
Thank you.
Carry on.
Thank you.
I'm excited about the opportunity. I think that, as we all have talked about, that by the time that books are put out, they're already out of date. And so this isn't how kids are wired these days. They're not wired like, I can't see you and I, because you're so much younger than me. But they're just wired differently. And I think that this is exciting for them to be able to engage them on a level that they're ready for. And, I have yet to go visit the classroom, but Peter Schmer. I need to go visit his classroom because I keep talking about him and I keep hearing about him and the fact that he's been doing this for some time. He's been utilizing that computer lab and a volunteer and working his magic on the computer lab, teaching Algebra 2 through Khan Academy and not using a book. So I say go forth and prosper.
Thank you.
Glenn?
So you're talking Chromebooks and not iPads at this point?
It's still debatable, but the Chromebook is about half the cost of the iPad at this point.
Yeah.
And so we think it's a fiscally responsible choice. It also has, with a wireless environment, the full experience of a laptop.
So assuming this is successful, then you're basically on the hook then for buying a ton more of these Chromebooks in the future. I mean, because you're talking, you're right now you're doing one class in the school, but eventually, if you're adopting this curriculum, you're adopting it for all the kids. So are you then suggesting that we're going to be supplying a one-to-one, every kid in the high school gets a Chromebook because every kid goes through math?
We don't think so. Actually, one of the questions that's come up as a survey item for students and teachers is, did you bring your own device? And if so, did you prefer it to the one that was provided for you? And if so, if we have those data, would we look at that and say to ourselves, you know what, 65% of students brought their own device and didn't actually use the Chromebook after a couple weeks, and therefore would that make us invest a different amount in one-to-one devices that we provide to students directly? And we have the preliminary research that tells us a lot of our students have their own devices and would prefer to do that. If we had a platform like, I'm probably not using the right word, but something like CK12 that's available on, that's platform agnostic. Is that what they say when you can load it on your Android? Or, thanks for bearing with me, Glenn. But that's the answer to your question is no. I don't think that we would commit ourselves to buying an iPad for every student. The second part of that you started to say was, if every kid goes through math, would we be issuing laptops for math? And I think that as we move forward with different content area adoptions into the next 5 or 10 years, each group of professionals, science teachers, language arts teachers, will have the same question about what to buy or how to invest. And I can see that this $400,000 for math teachers won't be the end of the line, nor will it be for our investment in technology. So I think what we're talking about with Don Wolf is where do our investments in technology for tech-enhanced classrooms and our adoption of materials to support instruction and content areas, where does that merge? And how do we start to be smarter about that?
My further comment is, I mean, that's when we start to have the collision between our capacity, which is one of the reasons why I'm excited about increasing our bandwidth. That's a real issue. When you start everyone on, they have to be able to actually get to the internet. If you have 50 kids in one location trying to do the same thing, it can be tough. So, that's part of it. And I am somewhat concerned about the cost of going all electronic. I'm the tech guy, but I know how much tech costs. Yep. So that's the other, my final comment, and by the way, I'm all for the study, so you got my thumbs up as well. My other comment though is, we have an online academy that do teach math. And so any thoughts of partnering with the curriculum that they already have and they're using in their system as well? I mean, Khan Academy is great, but it's not what we've got a license for already to use in our district.
Right. Yeah, we are considering the curriculum for HOA. And the question about bandwidth and readiness to do this comes up in the next few weeks. Don and his team are talking about how to make sure the math hall and the math location is ready for that amount of use, even 50 at once. So yes, we would back a teacher who wanted to use Florida Virtual's math curriculum, for instance. I'm not sure what the cost associated for expanding the use of that is. I'm not sure what our agreement is right now, but yes, green light on anything that a teacher wants to research based on the knowledge of the math study team and the tech team on what's valid and what's comprehensive enough to meet the needs of students.
I could be wrong, but my understanding was the state or something was providing that to us for the entire district. So, but that's certainly something I'd like to see unified. If we're going to do an online curriculum, I think it ought to be the same thing we teach in our academy.
Thank you. Taking that down as a note too.
Any other comments for Travis?
Do you have a list of sign-ups?
Not yet. Would you like to be on the distribution?
That'd be great in the weekly update, I think. I think teenagers are going to be happy that if they get in this little test, they want to carry home a math book that's older than them. And it's almost that's just that. So good job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the last report of the evening is financial report.
The boundary process has been pretty much all-consuming for me. So what you see here today was not written by me, but I'm just really thankful that we have a team in the business office that continues to get the work done, gets people paid, gets the bills paid. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have, but the work that's been done in the business office the last 2 months has not been done by me. So.
Anyone have questions for Adam? Jean?
I have a quick question on the fee study group. Is that specifically, we've talked about this in the past, we're really looking at those fees for secondary levels and really looking through and saying,
primarily at the secondary level, what we're trying to do is develop a consistent fee structure district-wide. Right now, we're kind of all over the board in terms of not necessarily what we charge, but who has to pay, who doesn't have to pay. So we're trying to get consistent with how that fee looks. And I know Matt's been really involved in that. I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, Adam said it perfectly. We had a group of people together that did a study of what we charge and how we go about collecting those fees. And what we know is we need to study the actual fee charges a little bit more, but the practices for how we collect fees and some guidelines can be worked on starting now.
And are we analyzing which fees we would want to continue?
The dreaded towel fee.
We did get rid of the towel fee.
T-shirt fee.
Oh, we don't have a t-shirt.
Yeah, some middle schools have a t-shirt fee. And my student came home and said that he heard there's going to be a short fee next year as well.
Interesting, I hadn't heard
So
that.
don't know if that's the case, but I just think anytime we can analyze which fees and sometimes I think we pass a fee, we think it's $4 or $5 and it's not a big deal, but all of those $5 fees add up. And so I think if we can analyze maybe that we won't get anymore. Sorry, Adam, I'm like a broken record on that one.
No, we'll keep working on that.
Any other questions about the financial report? Perfect, thank you, Adam.
So,
yes.
Actually, I let him get away. If I could direct the question back to Travis.
Absolutely.
So, you talked a lot about the technology and the Go on that. I forgot, didn't get to ask a question about there was something about the CPM restaging how curricula is delivered in different years and mixing topics together that weren't mixed before, and there maybe wasn't Algebra 1, it was more like the mix of topics of the curriculum of the high school, not just the material used, but the actual curriculum order of delivery was being modified or studied or looked at. I don't know if I'm making sense and if you know how to respond, but you didn't touch on the topic of how the curriculum order or delivery of topics and course names and things might be.
So the first thing is that we've decided in the Common Core you can deliver an integrated math sequence or a traditional math sequence, and we've decided a year ago to stick with a traditional course sequence, which is algebra, geometry, algebra 2, etc., instead of integrated 1, integrated 2, integrated 3. So
okay, so that was a decision that's already been settled.
And so the curriculum, what we're investigating right now is for grades 9 through 12. What materials, what professional development, what technology can deliver that course sequence at our high schools.
But you are measuring that curricula against, is there standards as Common Core to play or?
Yeah, each course, the syllabus for each course or the planned course statement is here are the standards that are in this course. And regardless of what materials you use, whether that's Khan Academy or a Holt textbook, the standards are the same, and the instruction, the thing that would vary would be the instructional strategies the teacher's using, the resources, the materials, the assessment tools potentially, except for the common assessments that we have established across the district. So what's tested in my mind is from one classroom to the next was the ability of that teacher to have those students be successful in meeting those standards. So I think in theory, what you're saying is exactly right, which is regardless of the curriculum that a teacher investigates in this action research, we'll be testing that against other, more accurate term is materials. Whatever materials that teacher's using will be tested against the others, assuming that our curriculum, when we talk about that, is everything, the standards, the assessments, the instructional practices, and the materials. So we've actually been really deliberate with the math study team to differentiate between curriculum, which is the whole package, and materials, because we're moving into an era where the textbook is not the curriculum. It used to be. You used to plow through that, and that contained what might be standards and what might be good assessment practices, but not really. And so now we're building that in our professional learning communities at each grade.
Great, thank you for the follow-up. HCU report?
Hello, I'm Evan Hunter. I work just on the hall taking care of computers for the district. Eric is out. He's on paternity leave because he just had a new baby daughter. So he is off being an awesome father. So we are missing him terribly, and we'll be really glad to have him back. This is kind of weird for me. The conversation that was going on upstairs about classified hours, I'm really encouraged about because simply stated, we need hours. A lot of our staff are really hurting. They've been cut down from 7.5 to 7 to 6.5 to 6. in a lot of positions, they go from 3 to 4 people down to 2 people doing the work. And they still have the same amount of work, they still have the same stuff to do, and they get caught into this tension that they have with their administrators and their supervisors, that they have to have that dreaded, I need prioritization of my workload. Administrators do not want to have that conversation. Staff don't want to have that conversation either, but they need that guidance, and it causes a lot of stress, and it just isn't good all around. What I really liked was about the conversations I've been hearing is that you're really looking at targeted things that really help instruction and help sort of make life a little better, because most classified staff show up when students show up and leave when students leave. So there's no time for development or coordination. If they want to have a meeting with a teacher, it's usually while they're both going to the bathroom and for a couple minutes, and then they're back to work. So a half hour, one half hour every week, that allows them to go to staff meetings. It allows them just that little bit extra time that they can sit in and get some leadership from their, from management. They can collaborate, they know what's going on, because a lot of the sort of, our classifiers sort of hit with that double whammy of, they don't have enough time because they're working with students, and they also don't have access to computers to read their email because they're dealing with students. So there's a lot of stuff in there, and when you really look at it, it's really, really cheap to get classified a little bit of extra time. It's for example, if you look at the media assistants, to give them one extra day at the start of the school year, it's only a few $200. And I mean, it's not a lot, and you can make your money stretch really far and have some really great effects. And we really feel like what you guys are doing with the $100,000 is a step in the right direction, but I think everybody's aware that we need more, that we need hopefully that the state will grant us more money, and we are sitting here waiting and hoping for that day when we actually get back to full funding, and we're more willing to work with everybody to try and make that, be part of the solution to move everyone forward. I'm very happy with the conversations we've had with Saidia and Debbie, because they are our advocates and they are our allies in getting us these hours back, and we really appreciate all the work that everybody's been doing to make life better for everyone. So, thank you.
And Maureen.
So we also appreciate that we're finally taking some steps toward putting more people back in the classroom and in the buildings. There are a variety of opinions about the budget, but by far we're just happy to see that however small this is in dollars, that there's the determination to make these improvements. We're looking forward to reducing class size more custodial time to improve building cleanliness and maintenance. I'll allude to the same thing. We're tired of having collaboration be the time you both go into the bathroom together, assuming the same gender, and for your little brief meetings there. And so with the adoption, new topic of Calendar B, we're hoping that there can be a uniform statement to the community about the importance of conferences, and to please not look at that week as a new winter break. And two final things. One is we just want to remind you that we don't have a day to close our rooms. We have half a day at the end of the year. And I want to remind you about the symposium next week, Monday, March 24th. It's at the Salem Convention Center, and Nancy Golden and Pedro Noguera will be speaking. It's through the OEA. There's more information on the OEA website, and I will email you that information as well. Everyone should remember. I'll email you guys. Thanks.
Thank you, Maureen. Mike?
All right, a couple things. First of all, there's been a lot of information in the news lately about seat time and which districts are okay with seat time and which districts are struggling with that. That's due to a new interpretation of what counts as seat time. So know that those are conversations that we are engaged in. We do have a couple of our schools that would fall below the 130-hour seat time requirement based on this new interpretation. What we will be doing is engaging further in conversations at the state level as well as with our Washington County counterparts to make sure that the current interpretation is correct and is going to be the one that is adopted moving forward. We're also going to be engaging in conversation regarding seat time versus the whole notion of proficiency-based instruction and just a conversation how those two don't seem to mesh. Much more to come on that. We do have a fix that will allow us to move forward with the 2 schools that are under the 130-hour threshold. We could put that into place by next year if necessary, but we don't want to jump the gun on that without further conversation first. A couple different things, 2 more things. Had the opportunity to visit Hillsboro Online. Because that is a hybrid model, they run a program where they bring their students in and they engage in various experiences together. I happened to be there when the 6th graders were there dissecting squid.
Oh.
And no, it got better. After the dissection was complete, it was deep fried and we ate it.
Are you really?
Yeah. Next year I told them I'm going to invite the board to this. I'm going to bring
I'm
fries.
vegetarian.
We're going to do fish and chips, and so I'm going to fries next time. So that was a great experience to be part of. And then finally, so much great participation at the Hillsboro School Foundation by the school board. Thank you very much for being there. They do so much for our district, and the contributions that they make to our staff and students, absolutely incredible. So your presence there was a huge plus for that event. So thank you very much.
I'll start to my right tonight. Eric.
Well, it's late, so thanks for staying, everyone.
Yeah, it's late. I just want everybody to know, I don't know if everybody knew, but Mike got the Ally Award from the OWALA conference on Saturday. So I'm very proud of you, and it speaks volumes for the work you're doing. Thank you.
Already gone through a bunch of thanks for all the great work. But it's great work by all of us.
Monty?
I'm blown away by the success of our boundary adjustment project. And I'm going to give all the credit to Beth because I know a couple guys couldn't do this on their own. Beth, thank you very much.
She did all the work. That's true. As a general, we don't like to get in the habit.
A couple things that one is I was mentioning to Mike when we were talking about upstairs, and we had this conversation during the budget talk about bond interest and the money that's in those accounts and being able to use that money. And I think that people need to know that it is a result in very strategic and smart investments. It didn't just come about, it didn't just float from the air. That it was strategic and smart, and this has really helped us in tough budget times immensely. And I think we should be shouting it from the rooftops and letting people know, because it really shows that we are good stewards of the money that we are given. And we won't say it was your idea because we just don't want anybody to take you away or anything.
Yeah.
You're what?
I wasn't here when
you weren't here when it happened?
No.
All right, so was it you?
Yeah.
But anyway, I just think that really shows the community, the investments, the smart ways that we are handling their investment. The next is the parade, the Hillsboro, the St. Patrick's Day Parade. I was standing on the sidewalk and happened to see a banner waving gal with a Crystal Apple Award, Christina Estrada. She's from the Hillsboro Online Academy, and she walked by, and then who comes riding along on her bicycle but Linda Harrington? They had their proud t-shirts, and they had a bus with the Hillsboro Online Academy, and kids were waving, and I don't think they had any candy, but I just think that it was fun. They had very positive, and they were walking about, so that was pretty cool. And I'm really excited about the opportunity tomorrow to go work with kindergartners at Kutama to read Diary of a Worm, and then to help them make worm compost. And I went to a little worm dealer in Southeast Portland and picked up my worms today. And
why don't you dissect them and cook them?
One student.
That's a different one.
Oh, these are little squirmies and everything. One student last year did ask if she could bedazzle her worm, and we were like, oh, honey, no, just little vegetables and a spritzer. But anyway, and I'm not really sure what this is about, this caught in the act, but I think everybody who's here tonight and during these fun and fascinating meetings until a late hour should get this caught in the act. What is this about? Does anyone?
It's exercise. It's wellness.
So it's all wellness?
Yeah.
And
we're
It's like walking or eating healthy, choosing an apple
Oh, so
over
you
a
passed it.
donut or something.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. Do all schools have this, or is this just a district office?
It's already
The
here, but we have
district-wide.
multiple sites that are doing the wellness activities.
Very cool. Anyway, I saw that, and just was going to ask about it, so thank you very much.
Glenn?
Well, I have a hard time topping 2,000 words. Good night, everybody. Thanks for coming.
And I just have two quick ones. One, thank you principals to open their doors and take the time when school board members want to visit to, the best part of the year, and I'm on my little rounds right now. And a thank you to Monty and his pals at the Optimist Club. We just did a mural installation at W.L. Henry. They completed their first artist residency with the Right Brain Initiative, and I ran days when the students came in the next morning and got to see the final product up on the wall. It was pretty amazing, so I invite everybody to go visit it. It's in their library, and their words and images are quite powerful. With that, it's been a over 5-hour meeting. I thank everybody for being here. We're adjourned.